Good morning, Canada. Welcome back to another episode of Question Period. Today is November 20th, 2024, and boy, oh boy, boy, is this a good day. Justin Trudeau is back from Brazil, back from the G19+1 summit, and he's gonna get his they-them butt kicked by Pierre Poilievre. Pierre is angry today. Are you kidding me? The Conservative Party is angry today. Rightfully so at that. Rightfully so, because the mic muting dick-taking tater, it's just a Freudian slip. My bad, folks. House Speaker Greg Fergus kicked out not one, not two, but three Conservative MPs yesterday. And yeah, that would piss anybody off. That would piss any party leader off, or any party in total. And so we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen. And the titles are certainly educated wishes based off of a comprehensive deep dive analysis and how I'm feeling today and what I think is going to happen. So before we get into it, I do want to encourage y'all to smash the like button and subscribe if you have not yet already. It does really help grow the channel. I don't say that to be repetitive. I say that because a lot of you are not subscribed. I see the analytics on this side, and above and beyond subscribing, hitting that little bell notification, that tiny little bell notification, just click and tap that. Make sure you have it set to all. I promise you, you will really appreciate it when it comes time for something crazy to happen, and you'll see it in real time unravel. That's the beauty of these live streams. We do stream Question Period episodes live every single day, Monday to Thursday. We don't do Fridays because usually it's the B team, but if I'm feeling a little bit spicy, I will turn my cameras on. But luckily, it's not Friday. It's Wednesday. It's Wednesday, and today is Caucus Leader Day. You got Pierre Trudeau and Jagmeet, I guess, going toe to toe, and the bloc, the French frogs, are there, and they are there to get more money for the province. So it's going to be phenomenal. But before we get into Question Period, we still got some time, just like any pre-fight. We're going to be taking a look at some news from yesterday, what's to come, what's to expect from this week, and then obviously, I want to try and get you guys to get matchy stickers like the one here on my microphone. If you use code SUNSHINE, BT dubs, right? Not BT dubs, but if you use code SUNSHINE, you click the link in the description. You click the link in the description. You go to the merch site. You click the sticker pack. It's a couple steps. But it's worth it. You get 15% off. Use code SUNSHINE, and you get all of these stickers right here. Liberal only scams. Freeland on a broom. Hey, that really looks like her, doesn't it? Trudeau must go. The matchy sticker right here, bottom left. That's what I got on my microphone. Keep calm, never vote Liberal. And stop the WEF, Klaus Schwab crying on a tractor. Alrighty. So let's get into what the heck is going on. And we're going to start things off with analysts predicting an early election. Who would have thought that? Let's take a look.
Welcome to CTV News Trendline with Michael Stittle and Nick Nanos.
Do you think the U.S. election outcome makes it more or less likely we will see an early election here in Canada?
Well, it'll still be earlier than the fall of 2025. I think that's for sure. The fact of the matter is it's hard to see the Liberals surviving a budget in the spring. I think I don't think the election in the U.S. has any impact on the Conservatives wanting to have an election. Like, let's face it, 41-25, the Conservatives are hot to trot to have an election as soon as possible to take advantage of the current environment. And, for the Liberals, it's kind of like trying to kick the can to get as much, to have as much time. But back to what we were talking about before, if the Liberals think that a better economy is going to help them, that's not what we learned in the U.S. election. A strong economy did not help the Democrats. So, lower interest rates, a stronger GDP, unemployment going down, there's nothing to suggest that that will help the Liberals materially. It didn't help Kamala Harris. I think for the Liberals, they've got to be thinking about what is their message on people paying the bills and the rising cost of living that they could use as a counter or an alternative to the Conservatives, because right now Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives seem to own issues related to the pocketbook, and that's a significant advantage for them.
I was muted. Mozi Tabarnak! I was muted. Greg Fergus, what have you done to my microphone? Dude, I just gave the winning lottery numbers for the next Lotto Max, and we're never going to know. Are you freaking kidding me? Blame Greg Fergus. Go to stopmutingthemic.ca if you don't like microphones being muted. What I did say before the dictator himself somehow muted my microphone, sources, trust me, bro, is that analysts, there you go, analysts believe that there will be an early election. Now, will it happen before Christmas time? Will it happen before they take off for Christmas? I mean, I don't know. There's less than a month before they take off for Christmas. But will it happen early 2025? Again, I don't know. It's a lot of money to do a, I think it's a little bit more money to do a snap election, early election versus a pre-scheduled election, but nonetheless, it's still a lot of money regardless. But you never know. I mean, a lot of people are speculating that once Jagmeet gets that golden pension, then he's going to call it. Will they ride it out for the remainder of 2025 till the fall? I don't know. But I think that the longer, my own personal opinion, I think that the longer they wait, the longer that Justin Trudeau waits and the Liberals wait, the worse it's going to get for them. I do not think, unless there's an insane controversy, 4, 5, 6 days in a row where Pierre Poilievre does blackface in Parliament, then it might even the odds, maybe. But again, we still don't know how many times Justin Trudeau did it. So how many times can Pierre Poilievre do it and still be prime minister? That's the question. That's a great question. I don't want to find out. I certainly don't want to find out. But I do think that there's a lot of wiggle room for little mistakes here and there. And if I'm being totally honest, I really haven't seen the Conservatives make a whole lot of mistakes. They really have not. There's been some things that I don't agree with as an individual voter, such as how much we've given to Ukraine in terms of grants for fighting that war. But that's an opinion thing, and there are a lot of conservatives that actually agree with supporting Ukraine. I personally don't think we should be doing as much as we are, but hey, that's the beauty of our own opinions, just like bumholes. Everyone's got one. Next up, we have some weather on Vancouver Island. Look, I lived in a van on Vancouver Island. No, not down by the river, down by the ocean. The times are new. And I got to see so many times this time of year, you had, insane amount of storms. Like, I would be parked on the road and the waves would be splashing on my van, and it was awesome. It was totally awesome to go to sleep like that. There was always the fear of, if I wake up, am I going to be in the ocean? Is driftwood going to knock my van over? Is it going to dent my van? Am I going to die parking right next to the ocean? I certainly lived life a little bit on the edge. But what we're talking about right now specifically is a bomb cyclone. That's the wild weather in British Columbia, specifically on Vancouver Island, or hitting the west coast. So here we go. Let's take a look at this.
Trying to understand all of the terms coming out of the world of weather, and with a storm expected to hit the BC coast later today, it becomes all the more important. CTV meteorologist Kaylin Mitchell is standing by. Kaylin, walk us through what we need to know.
Thank you very much. And to begin with this definition of what a bomb cyclone is, we're just going to recap quickly what pressure in the atmosphere is. Now, we've probably all heard of high pressure systems and low pressure systems. High pressure systems typically tend to be our sunny, fair weather systems, and low pressure systems are more inclement weather systems, rain, snow, gusty winds. Now, when the pressure gets low enough, with those low pressure systems, then they become stormy. And our most intense storms typically drop to a pressure of 970 millibars or lower. When this process of a storm intensifying happens fast enough, and it's usually defined by a drop of 24 millibars or more in 24 hours or less, it is sometimes referred to in meteorology as explosive cyclogenesis or the storm system bombing out, hence the term bomb cyclone. It's been used in meteorology back into the 1970s, more popular in media over the last couple of decades, which is why we're going over the definition now. This is the exact process this West Coast storm system is going to undergo as we move into Tuesday evening and Tuesday night, with its central pressure expected to deepen near 940 millibars, which will easily meet that qualification of a bomb cyclone. And as it drives a very strong pressure gradient into the coastline of BC, that is going to create some very strong winds with exposed coastal areas of Vancouver Island, parts of the Central Coast, and maybe up towards the Haida Gwaii Islands, potentially getting into some gusts between 100 and 140 kilometers per hour. That'll bring about concerns such as tree, branch fall, associated utility outages, and disruption in travel services such as BC ferries.
So my van actually once got hit by a tree. I was driving from Sombrio Beach on the west coast of Vancouver Island down to Souk over to Victoria. And a tree fell because of the weather. It was around this time of year several years ago. And a tree collapsed, and part of the collapsed tree snapped off and bounced off the front hood of my van. Now, luckily, the van that I was traveling in, that I was living in, was fully Linexed, and so I think it did more of an owie to the tree than it ever did to my vehicle, which is part of the reason I got a fully Linexed camper van to begin with. Totally badass, very insulated and bulletproof to a certain extent, so kind of neat, and a tree proof, right? And they didn't call it a bomb cyclone. It was just weather. It was just like, hey, today's a stormy day. And a lot of people would be like, oh, well, let's stay away from the ocean. And the nut jobs would say, oh yeah, man, surf's up, dude. Let's go to Sombrio or Tofino. And that is life on the West Coast. So yeah, take with that what you will, but naming all of these different weather patterns with these scary names, I mean, is it really working? I'm not too scared. So yeah, anyways, moving on here. What do we got this? Trump administration's impact on Canada-US trade relations. Let's take a look.
We have right now a very successful free trade deal with the United States and Mexico that was negotiated and signed by the incoming American president. So we're in a good place right now. There are questions and concerns around some of the Chinese investments in Mexico, things that I highlighted directly with the Mexican president. But I also pledged that we're going to be there to work to ensure that North American trade continues to stay strong.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau there when asked about calls from both Ontario and Alberta's premiers to cut Mexico out of any trilateral free trade agreements and instead pursue a bilateral one with the U.S. That response comes as U.S. President-elect Donald Trump taps Howard Lutnick as his Secretary of Commerce. Lutnick is going to have a key role in shaping U.S. trade policy in that portfolio, which also has a big impact here in Canada, given the U.S. is our biggest trading partner. So let's talk about that with our front bench. Brian Gallant, Lisa Raitt, Tom Mulcair, and Rob Benzie are back. Brian, I'll start with you. Let's start on the question of Mexico. The Prime Minister didn't explicitly say, we're never going to leave this with Mexico. We got Mexico's back, but he certainly, was careful with his words in not saying, okay, a bilateral trade deal, is a good idea. What do you think of that approach?
Yeah, we discussed this last week. I'm sort of not surprised because obviously I think Canadians are aware and probably hopeful that most Americans believe trade with Canada is a positive for them. And certainly when you sort of go to the polling and when you even sort of anecdotally listen to elected officials in the U.S., it certainly feels like Canada is in a better spot in terms of public opinion regarding trade than Mexico would be. So certainly the idea of raising that by the Conservative premiers as of late was sort of politically savvy to do, but also even from a U.S. point of view, sort of something that could maybe resonate. So it's something to put out there that certainly would have some people sort of nodding their heads yes. That said, as we discussed last week, the Prime Minister certainly would, I think, and Canada official position would want, I think, to have Mexico at the table, of course, and have this amazing trade deal that has been a very positive thing for the three countries and obviously for Canada. So having that walk that line of sort of not completely dismissing it as sort of an idea that's way out there, but not really sort of agreeing with it, and then kind of mildly saying there are some issues that we're going to have to raise with Mexico. And in fact, he's paraphrasing, of course. In fact, I've already raised them. So certainly I think that answers exactly what I would have predicted, and I think my colleagues were sort of getting at last week when we discussed this issue. So obviously, U.S. is the elephant in the room, as they always are. So as much as we want to talk about Mexico, I think there's a lot more to think about and to strategize when it comes to the U.S.
Do you think there comes a point, Tom, though, where the federal government does say we're willing to cut out Mexico?
Yeah, I think that Mr. Trudeau is pretty well there in his own mind, but he's being very diplomatic and super careful. He doesn't want to be as blunt an instrument as Doug Ford. But I do think also, even though I'm a strong believer in free, and I think that the deal that we signed the last time around, the one that Trump renegotiated with Chrystia Freeland, was actually a better deal than the first time out. It got rid of, for example, the investor state provision that gave companies powers over governments. It was a good thing to hear. But I also think that the Mexicans have been, cruising for a bruising here for some time. They brought in so many factories from China. They would bring in components. They would build stuff up and then try to get it into the North American market and passing it off as Mexican products. Now, the Americans are not entirely clean about this stuff either, because when John Deere, the tractor folks wanted to build recently a new plant in Mexico, they were threatened in the States because they just don't want stuff leaving the States. So you either have a free trade deal amongst the three countries or you don't. And I think that Canada can probably play the peacemaker here, but I think that Mexico is going to have a mea culpa moment when they realize that they've been playing fast and loose with the rules, because there are rules in trade deals. And if they have been doing that, stretching the elastic too much, the Americans, especially under Trump, are going to react very strongly, and they could wind up sitting on the curbside outside of this new deal. So I don't think that that's a good thing, but I think that continuing with the three countries together is the ideal situation. But Mexico is going to have to own up to the fact that they haven't been playing this.
Rob, I wanted to ask you also about, maybe you can weigh in on that, but also about Howard Lutnick, huge proponent of tariffs employed in the same way that Trump wants to employ them and has pledged to employ them. Seems like another confirmation that they're coming in one way or the other. I know you spend a lot of time interviewing people around Doug Ford. How worried are they about that?
They're very worried about it, Bashi. And one of the things that the Ontario Premier is doing is trying to promote what he calls a Can-Am kind of Fortress Can-Am. And I think that's one of the reasons why he kind of threw Mexico under the bus last week in a surprise move. And no one saw that coming. And interestingly to me, he had a conversation with Prime Minister Trudeau hours after he said that Canada should just do a deal alone with the United States. So it was almost like he was floating a trial balloon for the PM. And I guess the PM rewarded him sort of by giving Doug Ford a cameo in his video that it was released yesterday, the 6-minute immigration video. There's like the only other politician in that video is a clip of the Ontario Premier. So it was an odd kind of backslap, I guess, or whatever. But yeah, I think that would the Prime Minister and the Ontario Premier throw Mexico to the wolves to protect themselves? Yeah, they would.
What do you think about that?
So if I were talking to our Mexican friends, I would say what you're witnessing is domestic politics. Alberta, of course, is going to want to align themselves with the United States because a Trump administration is going to be pro-oil and gas reserves, and that's something they like. And I'm sure the Premier likes to dig at the Prime Minister. In the case of Ontario, Doug Ford wants an early election in the spring, and he wants to run against Justin Trudeau. And what a great way to put the Prime Minister on the spot. And the Prime Minister took the bait. What the Prime Minister could have said was, oh, it's way too early to have these kinds of discussions right now. I don't know. We haven't even gotten into the room to have these kinds of discussions. I think that both of these premiers, should just calm down and wait for this to become a matter that we will deal with it. And we will deal with it in accordance with how we normally deal things. And of course, I would consult with the provinces on the matter. But I think that they are just using this opportunity to get the Prime Minister in a position where they can, take advantage of it for their own political needs.
And how do you mean? Like, in what way? Well, you think sort of the compare, like them relative to Trump type of thing?
Absolutely. So who is going to stick up for you versus Mr. Trump? It's going to be Doug Ford in Ontario. Doug Ford knows what's going on. He's going to make sure Ontarians are protected. And, Mr. Trudeau's still talking about whether or not all three countries are going to be involved. It's just talking past one another. And I think Mr. Ford has the better position on this.
Do you think that, now we've had a couple of weeks of Trump, Brian, do you think that there is domestic political advantage to be had, either at the provincial or federal level vis-a-vis Trump?
For Trudeau, you mean, or for Ford and Smith?
For either, yeah. Like, can anyone gain points basically on saying certain things or looking a certain way compared to Donald Trump?
Well, yeah, of course. You can. That I think is an answer I would give for almost any personality, right? You can go up against people and you can sort of try to feed off of their popularity or the opposite. So yes, of course. And I think in this case, I think Lisa makes an interesting point in the idea that for Ford and for Smith, it might be a way to say, if the talks don't go well with the three countries, they sort of have an argument to say, well, we had a solution. So certainly it's a way to play off of sort of this big, again, use the same word, elephant in the room, and that they're putting out what they think are thoughtful solutions. And frankly, on the face of it, I'm sure a lot of people are like, yeah, that could make sense if we're kind of jammed and we just want to make sure that trade between our two countries stays solid, right? So I think Lisa's right to say that might be what they're thinking. It could also just be that Ford who started the ball down the hill, wants to sort of just show that he's thinking about this and is being thoughtful and trying to provide solutions, because nobody wants to be prepare. To your question, you want to at least show that you're preparing for Trump and what that will mean. So this is a way to say, look, I'm thinking of this. I have some ideas, and we got to be bold and drastic if needed to make sure that we mitigate any sort of negative impacts on the province or country with the Trump administration.
Like Rob said, for their own election that's going to happen probably in a few months' time. Okay, thanks everybody. I'll leave our discussion there. I appreciate it. Our front bench, Brian Gallant, Lisa Raitt, Tom Mulcair, and Rob Benzie. Our takeaway is up next. Stay right there.
So let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. But when it comes to my own personal opinion for trade deals, I just don't know if the Liberals and specifically Justin Trudeau are the right person and party to be doing these negotiations. Like, they've had 9 years to try and make things right here in Canada with, other countries, international affairs, trade deals, and it just hasn't been good. Look at what Justin Trudeau's accomplished this year alone, or just in the past 12 months with India. Getting diplomats kicked out, expelled, retracted, whatever you want to call it, it hasn't been good at all. And so dealing with America, dealing with Mexico, I think that we need to go back to just like pro oil and gas and have maybe, a really good run to just grow the economies, build a lot of infrastructure, and make North America just more sustainable and more powerful, more economically viable. But that's my own personal opinion. I would love to know your guys' opinion. And then we got another video here pulled up. Should Randy Boissonnault resign? That is the golden question. You have analysts, you have politicians that are saying that, yes, Randy should resign or he should be fired. So let's take a look.
When it comes to ensuring the justice for Indigenous people, justice for the good people of Edmonton Centre, and that means Randy Boissonnault must resign. If he does not resign, it's incumbent upon the Prime Minister to kick someone like that out. I'm always happy to see my colleagues go on a soul-searching journey. It cannot come at a cost or expense to taxpayers. If that means him resigning in order to find his soul, then he should resign as an MP.
That's New Democrat MP Blake Desjardins there, joining calls from the Conservatives for a Liberal cabinet minister to resign. Desjardins, who is of Cree and Métis descent, says Minister Randy Boissonnault's shifting claims regarding his family's Indigenous heritage should result in him being removed as a minister. To recap, Boissonnault has identified as non-status adopted Cree, but corrected himself last week to say his adoptive mother and brother were Métis. He's also facing scrutiny for allegations that a company he formerly co-owned claimed to be Indigenous-owned when bidding for federal contracts in 2020. So should the minister resign? Let's bring in the front bench to talk about that. With me this evening, former New Brunswick Liberal Premier Brian Gallant. He's now the CEO of Space Canada. Former Conservative Deputy Leader Lisa Raitt is here in studio. She's the Vice Chair and Managing Director of Global Investment Banking at CIBC. CTV News political analyst and former NDP leader Tom Mulcair is with us, as is the Toronto Star's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Rob Benzie. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
It's good to see you tonight, Lisa. I'm happy to see you here in studio. I'll start with you. Should he resign?
Yeah, I think he has to. Regardless of whether or not we're friends with Randy, and I like Randy an awful lot, but he's in a pickle, and he cannot explain his way out of it. He has lost the faith, I think, of Indigenous groups across the country. And as a result, he's not going to be effective in the cabinet. And for the sake of the government, I think he does have to go. And for doing the right thing, he has to go. But I'd also say that, you know, as you lay out the issue, there is a woman who is going to serve jail time for doing something similar, claiming that she had Indigenous status in order for her daughters to receive tuition benefits or benefits of another kind. And that is being criminally prosecuted and criminally punished. I mean, these are serious matters that you have to take in an appropriate way. And if the punishment for the crime is resigning from cabinet, he's getting off easy.
Tom, I just spoke to Minister Duclos about this, and he was pretty deferential to the explanation provided so far from Minister Boissonnault, that he apologizes for sort of the confusion he has and has had over his heritage, and that he is, you know, distancing himself from his business partner. He said he made that, you know, Indigenous-owned claim, and he wasn't aware of it. That's what Minister Boissonnault has presented so far. Minister Duclos said, you know, I take that as it face value, and let's move on. Do you think that is, you know, going to land as far as an argument from the government goes about keeping him in cabinet?
No, and it's further evidence that we're into a fin de regime, the end of the Liberal regime, when you can't even get something like this right. These things are usually handled quickly and cleanly. And right now, nothing gets handled in the PMO. It gets handed off. Mm-hmm. And then it's a water torture. It drips out day after day with a new article that shows that the umpteenth explanation he's come up with to try to claim some sort of Indigenous heritage doesn't wash either. And so it's just been horrible to watch. He should have been gone.
Even if it wasn't this Randy, even if it was his business partner, like he's trying to claim, as you just heard, a woman is being criminally prosecuted for making the same type of claim that she is Indigenous, so that what the heck did Vashi say? So that her daughter could get grants to go to school or something like that. Like, that is such a smaller scale. The amount of money that's provided for that grant versus the grant that Randy or his business partner is claiming. Like, okay, if you don't want to put Randy in the hot seat, then put his business partner there. You falsely claimed that you were an Indigenous business to try and get a metric shit ton of money from us taxpayers, right? That is a big no-no. If you're going to criminally prosecute the small guys, the independent people, come on. Then you got to go after the big boys the same way, if not with more seriousness.
A while ago, especially as Lisa correctly points out, around the whole issue as to whether or not his company was allowed to make the claim of indigeneity in order to get access to those government contracts that required such. So I've rarely seen anything so badly handled, frankly. And I heard your whole interview with Minister Duclos. But he kept insisting that Randy Boissonnault had been clear. He's been clear on this. He's been clear. He's been anything but clear. It's just been a succession of different versions that he shaped changes to try to adapt to what's been in the papers the day before. It doesn't wash. Nobody believes it. And at this point, you know, this is the foundation of our government. It's ministerial responsibility. Right now, there are 6 ministers who are not coming back, who have left. I mean, so many people are doing double duty. Lots of areas have not been filled. The cabinet is like a Swiss cheese. Boissonnault will be the 7th. It's high time Trudeau did something to start trying to replace him. But he should start by getting rid of Boissonnault, who's just going to hurt him. The real reason he's there is there's only one other Liberal MP from Alberta. And he has his own problems going back to the last campaign. He'd be very quick to name. So they're just trying to stick with Boissonnault, but it makes no sense politically. And frankly, it makes no sense morally either.
Yeah, I mean, to Tom's point, Brian, the Prime Minister was asked, he's in Brazil at the G20 this morning, kind of should he stay in cabinet? And he said, oh, Minister Boissonnault has, explained himself, and he's spoken about that, and I'm happy with the job he's doing, looking after jobs and employment, and he mentioned Alberta as well. Is this a case of, if there is this cabinet shuffle, which we know is coming at some point, maybe not this year, but even into early next year, is this a case of Minister Boissonnault gets shuffled out for sure then? And if it waits that long, is there damage in the interim?
Well, that's definitely one of the options that they have, given I think, my two colleagues' lay of the land and sort of the reaction so far. So they could be looking at some of their options and say, look, we can push him out, we can have a talk with him to say that he should resign, or we could use a cabinet shuffle to make it happen, which maybe allows him to save face a little bit. On the politics, I mean, I think we can't ignore the fact, and I think Tom's absolutely right to point out, there's very few MPs for the Liberal caucus in the Liberal government in Alberta, so that's mildly a consideration. I don't know to what extent, but I'm sure that's something that's weighing on their minds in the sense that, look, we have these very limited seats and we need voices there from a government point of view, and from a political point of view, we need a bit of a foothold in the area, so in the province, so I'm sure that's a part of it. This is an interesting way of saying it. I mean, I'm sort of, to be honest, unclear on exactly what happened. I looked up and I tried to read some of the articles to fully understand.
Yeah, no, you're seeing everyone jump ship. Everybody is saying, hey, look, hey, we supported Randy, but right now it's too far gone. We can't support him. He's put himself in a pickle, and to be honest, he deserves that. He deserves to be nailed to the wall. He deserves, and the Liberals deserve their corruption, their scandals to be actually, to some sort of accountability to be had, and we might actually finally get that. It's extremely rare, but anyways, that's my own personal opinion. I'd love to know your guys's. Now let's take a look at what's going on in the House. So they did just sit down for statements by members. So without further ado, guys, here we go. But before I unmute it, I want to encourage you guys to smash the like button. We got almost 2,000 people in here. Let's get some more likes going, and then let's sit back and enjoy the shit show. Today's going to be wild.
And I thank them for having shared this incredible woman with the Sherbrooke community. The Honourable Member for Trois-Rivières. The Centre Communautaire de Loisirs Jean-Noël Trudel in Bas-du-Camp is celebrating its 40th anniversary this year. This centre, which welcomes over 2,500 people a week, offers a wide range of community services, including a sponsorship program for disadvantaged young people, day camps, sports, cultural activities, and more. The centre is a huge success thanks to the passion and dedication of its staff. Among their staff is the heart and soul of the centre, its general manager, Gaëtan Laperrière. Laperrière was hired in 1989. He has worked as a group leader, hall usher, volleyball manager, and then he went on to become head of programming and general manager in 2008. Centre Jean-Noël Trudel's ability to offer so many quality services to people in the area is largely thanks to the dedication of Gaëtan and his team. Bravo Gaëtan, bravo team, happy 40th anniversary, and long live the Centre Jean-Noël Trudel.
The Honourable Member for Nepean.
Speaker, on behalf of Canada's Sri Lankan diaspora, including both Sinhalese Canadians and Tamil Canadians, I extend heartfelt congratulations to Sri Lanka's President, Anura Kumara Dissanayaka, and his Progressive Party National People's Power on the historic majority in the parliamentary elections. This victory represents a mandate to implement the promised economic and constitutional reforms, including addressing long-standing demands such as returning state-acquired lands in the north to their rightful owners. The Sinhalese in the south, the Tamils in the Jaffna north, and all ethnic minorities, including Muslims and Malaya Tamils, have expressed newfound trust in the government. I urge Canada to seize this opportunity to reset its approach, shifting away from influence of diaspora groups with divisive agenda and focusing instead on fostering respectful and strengthened bilateral relations. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Hastings, Lennox-Naddington.
After 9 years of NDP Liberals, Canadian children have never been worse off. Yesterday, Campaign 2000 published their national report card, and under this Prime Minister, child poverty jumped 2.5% between 2021 and 2022, the largest annual increase on record for the second straight year in a row. With the cost of food up 35% since this government took office, it's no wonder that nearly 1 in 5 children, totaling 1.4 million, are living in poverty. And Mr. Speaker, breaking news, Canada has failed to improve its ranking on the Climate Change Performance Index. Sadly, Canada still ranks 62 out of 67 as other countries boast a better environmental record without punishing their people with the carbon tax. A Conservative government will bring fiscal responsibility and accountability back to Ottawa, scrap the tax, and put affordable food on the tables of middle-class Canadians. Let's bring it home.
The honourable member from Etobicoke North.
Mr. Speaker, an epic story to inspire us all. It's about compassion, passion, and integrity, immortalized in the movie Chariots of Fire with an important Canadian connection. 100 years ago at the 1924 Paris Olympics, Scottish sprinter Eric Liddell, son of missionaries, refused to run on a Sunday to compete in his signature race, the 100-meter sprint. Instead, he ran the 200 and 400-meter events, winning bronze and gold, the gold in world record time. Liddell exemplified the very best of athletics, and his faith and sport gave him a platform to help others. A year after winning Olympic glory, he returned to China as missionary, teacher, and mentor. When war approached, he sent his wife Florence and daughters back to Canada. He never saw them again. Liddell died in a Japanese internment camp, age 43. We join his family in Canada to celebrate his life, and his legacy endures.
L'honorable député de Sudbury.
Mr. Speaker, if you want to know what the future of Canada's clean energy economy looks like, look no further than my writing of...
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with the camera on the House floor.
...in combining environmental stewardship with economic development.
They got some rookies in there.
Canada's mining industry creates close to 700,000 direct and indirect jobs. And, Mr. Speaker, we're just getting started. Mining contributes $161 billion to Canada's economy.
Sorry, I went off screen to eat a
country's
breakfast sandwich.
At this time of global uncertainty, developing a reliable supply chain for critical minerals is vital to Canada's economic growth, peace, and security. Critical minerals and mining are at the center of the clean energy transition. And with over 300 mining supply, technology, and innovation businesses, I am proud to say Sudbury is at the heart of this effort.
Bravo. Hear, hear.
The honourable member from Columbia.
Mr. Speaker, today is now.
All right, folks, if you haven't yet already, I'd like to encourage you guys to smash the like button. Let's try and get some more folks in here.
Canada. Ronald McDonald House helps families struggling with life's toughest and most unexpected moments, caring for a sick child. Last year, their 16 houses, 19 family homes provided comfort and care to over 18,000 families across Canada when their child received treatment. Ronald McDonald House is joined today by Lindsay Williamson, a dedicated mother
Late breakfast.
advocate.
My wife's going through a sourdough.
Who was born with a rare genetic disease.
I don't call it phase, but she's baking lots of sourdough stuff.
That has
So she made bagels late last night.
Rest, normalcy, amidst the chaos of multiple
Makes for a great breakfast sandwich.
As Lindsay has said, strong families are essential in building blocks for strong communities. Mr. Speaker, I couldn't agree more. Let's welcome Ronald McDonald houses from across Canada and help them to deliver the care and comfort that families can also heal.
Oh. Here, here. The honourable member from Willowdale.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians know that foreign interference poses a grave threat to our democracy. That's why many are concerned about the Leader of the Opposition's refusal to obtain his security clearance. While the RCMP has uncovered foreign criminal activity in Canada, the Conservative leader prefers to close his eyes and repeat empty slogans in this House. We should
Yeah, Randy in the comments saying I hit the like button, but no one likes me here.
of Canadians. Every other party leader in this House has
I see you, Randy. I see you.
security clearance to stay fully informed. So I'd like to suggest that rather than obsess about maintaining tight control over his caucus, as reported in today's Globe and Mail, the Leader of the Opposition expend his energy on immediately applying for his security clearance. National security has to remain every member's priority. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Kamloops, Thompson, Caribou.
Mr. Speaker, this government is putting Paul Bernardo ahead of victims. First, the transfer to medium security in the dead of night to a jail with cushy conditions, including a hockey rink that doubles as a tennis court. No advance notice was given to victims. The latest issue is that the victims, including the French and Mahaffey families, are now being told that they can't attend Bernardo's hearing next week in person. This is the right that every victim should have to present their victim impact statement in person. The parole board's reason? Security. They won't say what security is at issue, though. The Correctional Service of Canada has an army of officers available to assist, but they choose to hide, to obfuscate. Why? I believe it's because they want to hide the true lax conditions of Bernardo's incarceration. They bend over backwards for Paul Bernardo while ignoring the basic rights of the victims' families. The French and Mahaffey families and all victims have been through enough. Why is this government re-victimizing them?
The honourable member from Battle River, Crowfoot.
Mr. Speaker, reading Canadian political news right now makes binge-worthy political dramas on Netflix look tame. Here's the plot. There are allegations of fraud, arson, destruction of records, grounded private jets, missing witnesses, and unfulfilled contracts. Scandals with the now just former Minister of Employment are stacking up. He claimed to be Indigenous, even though he was not, but he certainly wanted to be because he netted millions in contracts that were supposed to go to Indigenous-owned businesses. It's been revealed there were connections between that former minister and an international drug smuggling ring, and claims that the so-called Randy that he kept denying that he wasn't netted millions in government contracts. That minister may be out, but Mr. Speaker, here's the brass tacks of the situation. It's time for Canadians to put that morally questionable and corrupt government on notice. It's time for a carbon tax election so that Canadians can elect a common-sense conservative government to restore order, accountability, and bring home a country that actually does the work Canadians expect.
There's Pierre.
Order. The honourable member from Surrey, Newton.
Look at that walk.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians elect MPs to represent their communities in Ottawa, not to serve their party leaders' interests. But the Conservative leader does not seem to care. After more than 18 Conservative MPs advocated for Housing Accelerator Fund to support their communities, the opposition leader imposed gag orders, silencing his MPs from pushing for federal funding because he wants to slash housing initiatives across this country. Surrey residents cannot afford the Conservative leader's reckless plan to cut our $95 million agreement that would unlock 16,500 new homes over the next decade. It is time for Conservative MPs to stand up to their leader and fight his cuts to their community so we can solve the housing crisis.
Order. The honourable member from North Island, Powell River.
Mr. Speaker, the BC NDP's cabinet has been announced, and the vast majority of their leadership are women. In fact, the BC MLAs overall are more than half women, a first. Research shows when groups come together with a broad amount of diversity, decisions are more effective a better fit for everyone. As my friend Karen reminds me, when something is more accessible, it is more accessible for everyone. Research tells us that women are asked less than half as often as men to run for politics and need to be asked multiple times to consider it. I hope all of us in this House remember to get out there and ask many times for the amazing women of our communities to run for all political roles. With more inclusive leadership, we can create better solutions, better communities, and a better Canada.
L'honorable député d'Abitibi-Bay.
The Honourable Member for Abitibi-Bay James Nunavik EU. Mr. Speaker, today is National Children's Day. This is an opportunity, a very
Yo, guys, I don't know if you know this,
future of our society,
but chances are.
Most care and protection. Unfortunately, too many.
Now, here's my prediction for today.
Precarious conditions.
All right.
With unequal access to.
Here's my prediction. Are you guys ready? Write this down. Write this down. Write this down.
Diet and
I predict
environment.
that one of the conservatives,
And lack of
maybe it'll be Pierre, are going to bring up the fact
children face
of the G20 summit and how Justin Trudeau missed the photo op
the Bloc Québécois
with all other G20 leaders because he was walking around Brazil with his daughter.
meals at schools.
That's my prediction. I think they're going to bring it up.
Has yet
You guys ready? Write that down.
single penny to collect. On this day, let us renew our commitment to defending children.
And if I'm right, we're going to celebrate.
Building a fairer environment and world for them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Red Deer, Lacombe.
Mr. Speaker, let's play a little game of true or false regarding the former Minister of Employment from Edmonton. True or false, the former minister deceived Canadians and his caucus colleagues about his Indigenous heritage.
True.
True or false, the former minister from Edmonton's business deceptively advertised itself as Indigenous owned.
True.
True or false, the former minister's ethically challenged business fraudulently applied for and received government contracts meant for actual Indigenous businesses.
True.
True or false, the former minister from Edmonton's firm shares a mailing address with persons named in several cocaine busts.
True.
True or false, despite claims of multiple Randys, there's only one Randy at the former minister's business firm.
True.
True or false, the minister from Edmonton breached ethics rules by contracting his business while sitting at the cabinet table.
True.
True or false, the Prime Minister has one set of rules for actual Indigenous MPs in his cabinet and a different set of rules for non-Indigenous but Indigenous claiming multiple Randy personality disorder MPs in his cabinet.
True.
True or false, the Prime Minister should have fired that guy a long time ago.
Look at that. Off to a good start.
Order.
Yeah. Order. Order.
The honourable member from Hamilton Mountain.
Thanks to some excellent work by Radio-Canada reporter Christiane Noël, we learned this week that Conservative MPs are being muzzled by their leader. I quote, "The man who promised during his leadership run to make Canada the freest country in the world maintains tight control over the actions of his caucus members." One Conservative told CBC, "Everyone is being watched. What we say, what we do, who we talk to, we're told not to fraternize with MPs from the other parties, and that's not normal." The Conservative leader won't even let his members advocate for the Housing Accelerator Fund in their ridings. Money for housing for the people who voted them into office. I know my riding of Hamilton Mountain, the Housing Accelerator Fund means $93 million for 9,000 new homes over the next decade. Affordable housing providers like Inwell, Victoria Park Homes, and Good Shepherd say the fund is critical to their work. It's time the Conservatives stop parroting their leaders' slogans and start standing up for their constituents.
Order.
Here we go. Here we go.
Oral
questions. Questions orales. Honourable Leader of the Opposition to be next Prime Minister Canada, Pierre Poilievre.
The Prime Minister doubled debt, doubled the cost of housing, doubled crime with firearms, and doubled the use of food banks. And until a few minutes ago, he had a minister with a double identity. Is the Prime Minister aware of the fact that the minister in question directed his company when he was in cabinet, and he said he was falsely Indigenous. He's aware of this, and he defended and kept this minister in cabinet. Why did the Prime Minister, why is he so determined to protect the corruption of this minister?
Here we go.
Mr. Speaker, the member for Edmonton Centre has left the cabinet and will focus on defending these allegations. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, when the opposition leader talks about challenges that Canadians are facing, he's not offering any solutions except for cuts. He wants to cut the dental care program. He will cut the pharmacare program for contraceptive drugs. He will cut daycare spots. He will be cutting when Canadians need investment and growth. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Speaker, the former Attorney General in the Liberal Party, appointed by this Prime Minister, the first Indigenous person in this role, said that this was an insult for a Liberal minister to say they're Indigenous when it wasn't the case. But let's look at the different treatment of these two people. Why did the Prime Minister let go of a true Indigenous woman for having to tell the truth while supporting
Did Randy leave?
Indigenous minister who said falsehoods?
Randy left?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Did this just happen?
Speaker, for a leader who says he's concerned about people telling the truth, it's interesting to see that he is muzzling his caucus to not allow them to express their concerns with respect to investments in their community. Today we've learned, Mr. Speaker, that he doesn't allow free expression to his own members. Mr. Speaker, we're here in this place to raise our voices for our communities, but he wants his members to be speaking only his voice in their communities, and that's not how things work. The Conservatives members should say what they think, really.
Bro, Randy's gone. He got fired.
Opposition. This Prime Minister in 9 years doubled housing costs, doubled the debt, doubled gun crime, doubled food bank use, and up until a minute ago, he had a minister with a double identity. The Prime Minister knew that the minister was directing his business illegally from inside cabinet. He knew the minister had claimed there was another Randy when there was no other Randy. He knew that the minister had falsely claimed to be Indigenous in order to take money away from real Indigenous people, and yet he stood by him up until yesterday. Why is it that he always stands up for corruption on his own side?
I mean, he's gone now, Pierre. He's gone.
Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, the member for Edmonton Centre has stepped down from cabinet to focus on clearing these allegations. Mr. Speaker, with the
Handong 2.0.
opposition talks about the importance of speaking up. The reality is,
Oh, shut up with the reality.
no longer voices for their communities. They are his voice in their communities. That's not how this place is supposed to work, Mr. Speaker. We are focused on making sure that we're investing in Canadians, supporting them with the kinds of supports for housing, supports for dental, supports for childcare that Canadians need, while all he offers is cuts and austerity.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Muzzling caucus members. This is the guy who fired the first Indigenous Attorney General because she refused to defend his corruption. She said, and I quote, "A Prime Minister committed to true reconciliation would have removed Randy and the other Randy from cabinet long ago. Instead, we have to get to watch white people play ancestry wheel of fortune so shameful and extremely destructive." Why is it that he fired a real Indigenous minister for telling the truth while trying to keep in place a fake Indigenous minister who told falsehoods?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, telling the truth would be MPs continuing to stand up to advocate for their communities. But the Leader of the Opposition has asked them not to be their community's voices here in Ottawa, but instead be his voice in their communities. This is supposedly the party of freedom and freedom of speech, but he's muzzling his MPs. He's not letting them talk to the media. He's not letting them talk to committees. The reality is he's afraid of what they might say about him, because there is no
I don't think that at all.
this way.
That's just factually incorrect.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, this from a Prime Minister who has 20 caucus members that have signed a letter that they're ready to fire him. Why wouldn't they? This is the guy who's doubled housing costs, doubled gun crime, doubled food bank use, doubled the national debt, kept in place a minister with a double identity. Even his own caucus members know he's not worth the cost, crime, or corruption. So if he's not afraid of anything, why doesn't he call a carbon tax election like Canadian?
There you go. Come on, tough guy. No.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition just made very clearly the point that the MPs on this side of the House are free to share their opinions publicly.
Yo, the Conservatives are having a grand old time. He's going to try to mute the microphone.
Colleagues, the more time that we spend here in the chair interrupting the process so that we get order in the House, the fewer questions we will be able to have and fewer answers we'll be able to have in question period. So please control yourselves today. The Right Honourable Prime Minister from the top.
Mr. Speaker, in the minds of Conservatives, we just saw a big gotcha moment where I admitted that Liberal MPs are free to speak their minds and voice their opinions even when we have disagreements. That was astonishing to the members of the Conservative Party because they're not allowed to do that. They are not allowed to speak to the media. They are not allowed to speak their minds. They are not allowed to be voices for their communities. They are not allowed to stand.
What a gaslighting
in their cities.
Piece of crap.
That is the real scandal in this place, Mr.
Speaker.
Order! This is a zoo. Oh my goodness. He didn't mute the mic. So tell me the petition doesn't work. Try and tell me the petition didn't work. Look at him. Dude, we got like the top 50 something most popular petition in all of Canada. That's phenomenal.
Mr. Speaker, every day this House shows Quebec why we really need to get out of here. In the meantime, we have to repeat that the four parties in this House supported Bill C-282 on supply management, one of the rare consensus we still have here. 2 senators are blocking it. For the Prime Minister, is the Senate worth more than the vote of all elected officials from Quebec? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, in this House, like the Bloc leader has underscored, we all have supported unanimously protecting supply management, almost unanimously. On this side of the House, we are in favor of it. But the reality is that the Senate is doing its work. It is looking at this bill, and we will not accept any bills that minimize or take away the obligation of this chamber to protect supply management in any future trade deals. We are clear on this. Regardless of the work of the Senate, the desire of the chamber is clear.
Then I have
the honourable member from Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, democracy has spoken, and yes, there are some 50 Conservative members that voted against supply management. Nevertheless, to try to solve this imbroglio, I will remind everyone else this. I will go to the Senate to meet with senators in person. Can the Prime Minister also meet with these senators himself? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I often meet with senators, and I will continue to do so. But on this particular issue, I want to be absolutely clear. We will always protect supply management, regardless of the opinion of senators. We will defend, that was ironic, but we will defend the integrity of our supply management system, even when we negotiate new trade deals.
the honourable member from Burnaby South.
You know, families are telling me, they're telling me that their cell phone bills and their internet bills are so high that they have to cut back on monthly costs, like their swimming lessons for their kids. The Liberals are hurting Canadians by taxing essentials.
Calling election.
And King Cut and the Conservatives are going to make things even worse. They want to cut the benefit for children, the child benefits, that could lose families $600 a month. Now, will the Liberals stop taxing essentials like cell phone and internet bills right now?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
If the NDP wants to join us in making life more affordable for Canadians, all they have to do is put an end to the obstruction of the work of Parliament that the Conservatives are leading on. Parliament is supposed to do the work of Canadians in making their lives better, but with the Conservative Party's obstruction, there are bills being slowed down, there are measures around dental care, around Indigenous services, school foods. These are things that we need to unblock in this House, and if the NDP will help us stop the obstructionism by the Conservatives, we can deliver for Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
By stopping to tax the essentials.
Every time Bell or Rogers raise the price of your cell phone, the amount of GST people pay goes up too. The GST should never have been applied to essentials, but the Liberals are letting you down. It's time to fix this. Will the Prime Minister give people a hand by eliminating the GST on all essential products? Yes or no? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, if the NDP wants to join us in making life more affordable for Canadians, they just have to help us and the obstruction of this Parliament by the Conservatives. We want to work for Canadians to keep living costs down, but the Conservative Party's obstruction and the NDP's inaction on this issue has made essential bills held up. Dental care, school food, housing, Indigenous services are all held up. So many other things. So they need to work with us so we can prevent the Conservatives from blocking aid for Canadians.
Here we go, Pierre.
Once again, all comments must be addressed through the Speaker, but I know that he wasn't really speaking to the Speaker himself.
Then I have
the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
He's now admitted that the immigration system is broken after 9 years of his government. He blames bad actors. So let's put our detective hat on and find out who those bad actors were. Who was the head of the federal government that increased permits for temporary foreign workers by 154%? Who was the head of the federal government that issued 211% more permits for international students and a population growth plan that boosted growth by 300%? Wow. Can we identify who was that bad actor?
Aggressively passive. I love it.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, following a pandemic that had devastated our economy in a short-term way, Canadians needed and businesses needed extra support, so asked for more temporary foreign workers, asked for more international students, and we gave them. Our economy grew. Our economy got back faster than the United States, got back faster than many other countries of the world. And then we're now in a different situation where we've had to step up and reduce immigration numbers to make sure that our housing issues can catch up. This is what a responsible government does. It puts forward solutions that are right in the moment and corrects them when they're no longer needed.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
I don't think we found the bad actor yet. He blames it on labor market needs, but the biggest growth happened in non-labor market immigration. For example, he boosted permits for international students by 211%, and refugees by 726%. That has nothing to do with filling job vacancies. And when it comes to temporary foreign workers, he allowed more to go to places with already high unemployment. So once again, who was the bad actor that made these terrible decisions?
Yeah, man. Yo, Pierre is good at what he does.
Prime Minister.
He's good.
These little performances that the Leader of the Opposition...
Oh.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister from the top.
Mr. Speaker, these little performances that the Leader of the Opposition puts on are not fooling anyone. The only thing he is interested in is his own interests, his own quest for power. He is not asking he's asking his MPs to not be strong voices for their communities, including in communities that are relying on the investments in their housing so that they can respond to growing populations and housing pressures caused by increasing population. These are the things we are busy solving, but he would rather muzzle his MPs in order to look good when he's doing his little show.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, he's not helping us find the bad actor. You know, it's like there's been someone else running the country for the last 9 years. The system has come crumbling down. He claims that he cares about housing, but on that subject, maybe we'll ask him this question. Who is the head of the government that was warned by its public service 3 years ago that increasing population growth by 300% would cause the massive housing shortages that we see today?
Dude, Pierre's on fire.
Again, Mr. Speaker, with the little performances, when he would rather not admit that when he Harper's failed housing minister, he created a total of 6 affordable housing units across the country. He was part of a government that completely pulled back from any investments in housing. And yes, as a government, we've had to step up, make record investments. But even as we are making record investments to accelerate the construction of housing in conservative ridings across the country, he's preventing his conservative MPs from standing up for their communities to solve this housing crisis.
Like a fraction of the Liberals stand up and clap. It's so pathetic.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, when I was housing minister, we had 1 home built for every 1.5 people added to the population, which meant we were adding houses faster than we needed to, and we were providing affordable homes of half the cost of today. Last year, they added 1 home for every 5 new people, the biggest housing deficit in history. So once again, who was the bad actor running the government that was warned by its officials that all of this out-of-control population increase would cause a housing shortage?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the government in which the Leader of the Opposition was their failed housing minister deliberately chose to get out of the business of housing, which meant we needed to step up with a national housing strategy in 2017 and with record investments, not just to create more housing, but to change the way housing is built in communities across this country. That is money put into the pockets of municipalities to invest, to densify, to rapidify, to accelerate the permitting. Money that he's promising to take away, that his MPs are trying to speak out to defend.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, when I was housing minister, housing was half the cost. When I was jobs minister, I actually cut down the number of temporary foreign workers to make sure Canadians got the job. But the bad actor he's referring to is the same head of government that allowed 211% more study permits for people who weren't supposed to be working. He allowed 154% more temporary foreign workers while Canadians were looking for jobs, and 726% more refugees. Mr. Speaker, if he wants to know who is the bad actor that broke the immigration system, why doesn't he do what he loves to do the most? Look in the mirror.
Woo-wee! There you go. Put some W's in the chat for that one. That one was a good singer.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the irony of this, as the Leader of the Opposition likes to rhyme off facts and figures, is he won't even take a briefing that will allow him.
Here he goes. The same song and dance.
Facing this country.
This company, he just called Canada a company.
Not admit to. He has refused to get his security clearance. He has refused to take the briefings necessary to keep Canadians safe. So anytime he chooses to rhyme off facts and figures, we know that he is not actually caring about Canadians, he's caring about himself.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Now we know the difference. We want to axe the tax. He wants to axe the facts.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister.
Just make him Prime Minister already.
You see that immigration is fully broken. He's blaming bad actors for this problem. So can he look at who was at the head of government that allowed population growth increase of 300%, an increase in the number of international students by 211%, and an increase of 726% in the number of refugees. If he wants to find the bad actor, do what he likes to do and look in the mirror. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, Canada had one of the fastest economic recoveries after the pandemic amongst its peers. This is because we were able to welcome people to help support our labor market shortages across the country. But now we're in a different situation. We are solving this issue and adjusting our immigration targets and adjust the number of temporary foreign workers that are coming and adjusting the number of international students that are coming. This is when a government is responsible. This is a part of what it does to ensure proper growth for our country. The Honourable Member for Belley-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, if supply management protection fails, what will Quebecers say? What will they say about the Senate, about the government? What will they say about the leadership of this Prime Minister and of its incoherency? While the U.S. is ready to be more protectionist than ever, Canada, would it give up its agriculture? Would Canada and the Senate, are they the worst negotiators in history? Will they stand up? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we have always been clear as a government. We are going to protect supply management in any free trade agreement, present or future. And because of this, we support the Bloc's bill to protect supply management. If ever this bill fails in the Senate and we can't get it through here in the House because the Conservatives would vote against it, we will be here to protect supply management, even if we need to take government action to complete this task. We are here to protect supply management. And that's simple. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly, we want to protect it with legislation, Mr. Speaker. This is ironic. While the Senate of Canada and some senators want to sacrifice Quebec, it's the Bloc that is working for all farmers from Quebec and Canada.
I don't know
Do
about
we
that
realize that it's not just the Bloc? It's not about the Bloc. It's about the quality of what we're eating. It's about fair price. It's about the environmental impact of agricultural practices. I would ask the Prime Minister to come with me this afternoon to meet with these senators. Thank you. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I would welcome the Bloc leader to meet with senators. We work regularly with senators to pass good legislation for Canadians. And as I said, we are going to protect supply management. We agree entirely with our Bloc colleagues in terms of the importance of protecting supply management and farmers. And that is why we have taken action. We have committed as a government to never call into question supply management in any negotiation for upcoming free trade deals. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The Prime Minister is just off another bonanza of high-flying, high-carbon, high-taxing hypocrisy. This time on a trip to Brazil, he dripped with condescension for Canadians struggling to pay their bills. He said, it's really, really easy when you're in a short-term survive. I've got to be able to pay the rent this month. I've got to be able to buy groceries for my kids to say, okay, let's put climate change as a slightly lower priority. This is the Prime Minister burns 100 tons of jet fuel and releases 100 tons of greenhouse gases. When will he stop the high tax hypocrisy?
Yeah.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians are facing global challenges right now. As much
Shut the hell up. We're facing a Trudeau challenge.
His head in the sand. Global inflation, climate change that is impacting everyone around the world requires us to be working together, standing up for peace and justice on the world stage, standing up for women's rights, standing up for opportunities for the middle class. This requires us to work together, something the Leader of the Opposition can't do. He can't even work with his own MPs. He has to muzzle them. He is not letting them be voices of their community.
None of his MPs are muzzled.
The real colors of this Leader of the Opposition.
None of his MPs are muzzled. Fake news. Never been faker.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Order of his caucus wants to fire him, Mr. Speaker. Why? Food prices have risen 36% faster in Canada than in the U.S., a gap that opened up as the carbon tax came into force. The Prime Minister just goes on trying to tell Canadians that their mentality is off. He says there's a sense that affordability is in direct contrast with our moral responsibility to protect the planet, trying to shame Canadians for opposing his ineffective job-killing inflationary carbon tax. Will you stop lecturing Canadians and call a carbon tax election?
There you go.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I invite Canadians to actually watch my remarks down south. Where
No. Bro, you missed a photo op because you went on a walk with your daughter.
Putting affordability first for Canadians, even as we're fighting against climate change. The Leader of the Opposition can invent things that he thinks I might have said. That's not what I said. What I pointed out was that even as we are fighting climate change, even as we are creating incentives to grow our economy in cleaner, greener ways, we are putting more money back in the pockets of 8 out of 10 Canadians with a Canada carbon rebate. A fact that he's busy gaslighting Canadians again.
This guy has the audacity to try and say gaslighting. The gaslighter's claiming gaslighting.
I'm going to ask all colleagues, please, not to take the floor. I'm going to ask the Honourable Member from Grand Prairie Mackenzie to please not take the floor unless recognized by the Chair. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister has gaslit Canadians so much that Environment Canada has to do a recalculation of the carbon emissions that have come from the lamp. Prime Minister who tells Canadians that the Parliamentary Budget Officer's data, which shows that 100% of middle-class people pay more in carbon tax than they get back in rebates, that they shouldn't believe their eyes. That they shouldn't believe their eyes when they see the grocery prices, which are rising 36% faster in Canada than the U.S. So instead of trying to gaslight Canadians, why not call a carbon tax election?
Yep.
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition is once again just not telling the truth. The reality is the Parliamentary Budget Office said
Goodness.
10 Canadians get more money back from the price on pollution than it actually costs them in paying that price on pollution. The cost of inaction on climate change is astronomical, and that's exactly what he's proposing. Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition should stop misleading Canadians and actually understand that you can't fight for affordability, you can't fight against climate change unless you're investing in Canadians.
This guy's the ultimate gaslighter.
I know that certain comments cause a disturbance in the House, but I'll ask all members to be careful about the language that they use. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
His quadrupling carbon tax is all financial pain and no environmental gain. Today we learn that Canada, after 9 years of this Prime Minister, now ranks 62nd out of 67 countries for the Climate Change Performance Index. The Prime Minister says that Canadians starving or lined up at food banks should congratulate themselves for the fact that his tax has made us 62nd. We're 62nd, he pumps his fist into the air, Mr. Speaker.
Shameful. Why
does the Prime Minister make Canadians pay such high taxes to achieve such terrible results?
It's quite sad, really.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, once again, the Leader of the Opposition is entirely misrepresenting the facts for his own gain, for his own interest. That's really all he cares about. If he cared about Canadians, he wouldn't be standing against dental care. He wouldn't be standing against more spaces in childcare. He wouldn't be standing against putting more money in Canadians' pockets with a price on pollution that is bending our emissions down faster than our other G7 neighbors, at the same time as it's helping with affordability for 8 out of 10 Canadians in areas in which it lands. The Canada Carbon Rebate is an affordability measure that is protecting future generations, and he is standing against it.
He's like
The Honourable Member from Winnipeg Centre.
he has to lie.
Poverty has increased for a second year in a row, and parents are struggling more than ever to buy essentials like baby formula and diapers. The Liberals
Where's her pin?
families down. Meanwhile, the Conservatives want to cut childcare and cut the National
Oh.
School Food Program.
The other chick behind's wearing the watermelon pin.
Thousands of more
Her.
dollars every single year. On World Children's Day, will the Prime Minister lower costs for families by following the NDP's plan to cut GST on essentials?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I very much appreciate my NDP colleague bringing up the school foods program and her support for it. But if she really wanted to support it, she would help us stop the obstructionism by the Conservative Party that is preventing us from moving forward on delivering concretely for Canadians the way they need. Canadians need help and investments, and Conservatives didn't have enough in blocking and in voting against school foods, voting against and blocking dental care, voting against and blocking pharmacare. They're now blocking any capacity in this House to deliver for Canadians. The NDP needs to work with us and stop this obstruction.
The Honourable Member from Nunavut.
11 of the 25 communities.
She got her watermelon pin too.
Have experienced
It's tiny.
water advisories
Right there.
this year. That is almost half.
Yeah, I'm doing a petition.
The UN Special Rapporteur slammed this government for ignoring their obligation to ensure clean drinking water. The Liberals have failed. Nunavut children, families, and whole communities should not have to worry about drinking water. When will this Liberal government finally invest in Nunavut so everyone can have the clean drinking water they deserve?
Wear a Canadian and Nunavut pin. What the hell's the matter with you?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
To my colleague, I agree. We need to move forward on protecting clean water, on delivering. That's why we're asking the NDP to stop slow-walking the Clean Water Bill, to work with us to get it through this House so we can actually deliver the water that Canadians need from coast to coast to coast, including in Nunavut.
It's almost treasonous, man, to be wearing pins
Center to not take the floor.
from other countries when you're talking about problems within our country.
The Honourable Member for Alfred Palan. Mr. Speaker, foreign interference is a real threat to democracies all around the world.
Yeah, kick Mary Ng out then.
Like China and India and Russia are using tactics, underhanded tactics, to undermine democracies and further their own interests in countries like Canada. And yet, there is a deafening silence coming from the Leader of the Opposition. Can the Prime Minister explain why the Conservative leader must take national security seriously?
Please, take it seriously.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
That's all I say.
I'd like to thank the member for Alfred Palan for his work. Canadians expect all of us here to protect their safety, and yet the opposition leader is not very concerned about national security. He refuses to get a security clearance so that he can protect Canadians from foreign interference. He will reduce funding for CBSA, and he will put guns back into circulation on our streets. Canadians expect a government to protect them and not to jeopardize their safety with dangerous cuts. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Again on the rise, with 3 of the Bank of Canada's 4 measures now above target. And the Finance Minister admitted about a year ago that deficits cause inflation. And so she made this commitment in her budget, and I quote, "The 2023-2024 deficit will be at or below $40.1 billion. Since then, the parliamentary budget officer says that number has been blown away. Will the Prime Minister tell us here and now how much was last year's deficit? How much?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we just heard it once again from the Conservative leader. The foundation to his entire economic argument is that delivering programs to help Canadians in times of need somehow makes everything worse for everyone. He is proposing cuts to dental care, cuts to child care, cuts to the school food program, cuts to money on responding to the housing crisis in municipalities. His only answer to Canadians hurting is to cut services to them, while he exploits their fears for his own personal gain.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister misheard. It was the Minister of Finance who said that deficits cause inflation. The Prime Minister also said that every dollar of deficits contributes to inflation. And that's why they made the commitment, him and his finance minister, and I'm quoting here, to maintaining the 2023-2024 deficit at or below $40.1 billion, end quote. Last year's books have been closed for 6 years now. He certainly has all the data. Last 6 months. So how much was last year's deficit?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I know the Leader of the Opposition is keen to see our fall economic statement, which will talk about measures that are there to help affordability, to support Canadians, to be there to invest in them. He's looking forward to seeing all these great measures we're putting forward to support Canadians in their time of need, because he can't wait to vote against them, Mr. Speaker. He can't wait to slash services and programs that are helping Canadians. He can't wait to stand in the way of us helping Canadians through this difficult time by putting the best balance sheet in the G7 in service of Canadians who need a little more support. He's voted against supports for Canadians. He's going to continue to.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, it is him that admitted that deficit spending adds to inflation. Maybe that's why there's been a record increase in child poverty this year, with 1 in 5 kids now in poverty, 2 million people lined up at food banks. He has admitted, it's not my worldview, he has now admitted that deficits contribute to inflation. So that's why he promised that the deficit would not go above $40.1 billion last year. He's had 6 months since that fiscal year ended. Does he even know what the deficit was in his own government?
I mean,
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
it doesn't look good for Trudeau.
Obviously, the Leader of the Opposition is keen to hear our fall economic statement, but the reality is he's only looking forward to it because he wants to vote against it, because he's going to vote against measures that support Canadians, measures to be there for Canadian families who are struggling, to invest in things like school foods, to invest in more support for dental care for vulnerable people, to invest in jobs and growth creation right across the country. These are the things he has consistently stood against, because he believes in cuts and austerity and trickle down that gives benefits to the wealthiest, but nothing for everybody else.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
He's brought nothing but costs for everybody else, Mr. Speaker. He has a food program with no food. He has a pharma program with no pills. He has a gun buyback program that hasn't brought in a single gun, despite spending $67 million. He has a housing program that his minister admits doesn't build houses. But none of those things were the question. It was about his inflationary deficits that he admits drive up the cost of everything. So Canadians are watching and wondering if the guy in charge of this $500 billion enterprise called the Government of Canada knows anything about the numbers. So once again, does he even know the deficit for last year?
I love it when he breaks that fourth wall and talks to people directly at home.
Again, Mr. Speaker, he is eager to hear our fall economic update, and we will share it with him in due course.
Bro, it's winter. It's not fall.
Mr. Speaker, on
You're late on the update.
legislation that's going to support school food programs, that's going to move forward on delivering dental care for more Canadians who can't afford it, on expanding child care spaces, on putting money in people's pockets at a time where they're needed. And he is crossing his arms and forcing his MPs, because we know he forces his MPs to do whatever he wants, to block the passage of bills in this House, because he doesn't want to see Canadians helped right now. He wants to see Canadians hurt, because he's only caring about himself.
Like, whoever's trying to educate Trudeau on how to attack Pierre, it's not working. He looks like a dumbass.
Mr. Speaker, François Legault announced yesterday he's deploying the SQ, the Quebec Provincial Police, to watch Canada's borders. The SQ is going to have to do the federal government's job because no one in Quebec trusts Ottawa is ready to handle a potential wave of migration. It's come to that. It's not as if the SQ was looking for things to do, but they have to, because once again, the feds aren't doing their job. They're just sitting back and waiting for another crisis to materialize, with Donald Trump promising to deport millions of people. Why is this Prime Minister still failing to get out ahead of this one? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, as a government, we will always be there to defend the rule of law and to defend the integrity of our borders. We have a plan to increase staffing at our borders with officers and vehicles. We will work with our counterparts all across the country to ensure that Canadians can still have confidence in our sovereignty and the integrity of our immigration system as well as our borders. That's a responsibility that we take very seriously, and we've demonstrated that when we dealt with challenges in the past.
You're going to have...
The honourable member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Yeah, we saw that last year. Quebecers do not have confidence in this Prime Minister's ability to handle a wave of migration caused by Donald Trump. They saw how he managed the borders during the pandemic. They saw how he managed Roxham Road. They saw him on Twitter inviting the whole world to Quebec and then looking the other way when we were flooded with newcomers, Mr. Speaker. That's why Quebec has no choice but to send the SQ.
Call an election then.
Quebec is sending the SQ.
Let's start deportations. Let's build an ice wall.
Realize what's going on, Mr. Speaker.
Canada's going to get flooded, man. Like, it's something that I can't even comprehend. That's how big it's going to be.
I have a lot of respect for the professional and excellent work that the SQ is doing to protect all of Quebec. And they will continue to work with federal organizations like the RCMP and CBSA. Mr. Speaker, for a long time now, I've acknowledged the generosity of Quebecers who have done more than their fair share in taking in newcomers to Canada, and that's why we're compensating them. But that's why I'm still waiting for Mr. Legault's approval for temporary more temporary work permits because we need more immigration. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Quebec is at a breaking point because of decisions by this bad actor here, the Prime Minister of Canada, who sent out a tweet saying, "Welcome to Canada." The last time Trump arrived in the White House, he opened a welcome center at Roxham Road, which invited tens of thousands of people without housing, without jobs for them, without health care for them. Is he going to do exactly the opposite this time to avoid another crisis for Quebecers? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, protecting our immigration system and our borders has always been top priority for this government. It's our responsibility. The whole world is dealing with tough times, and that is why we took steps. We took the necessary steps to protect our principles and our values, as well as the integrity of our system. And we will keep doing that. We will keep staffing adequately, unlike the Conservatives who cut CBSA officers, who cut the RCMP when they were in office. We will continue to invest to protect the safety of Canadians. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. There was no Roxham Road when the Conservatives were in power.
Boom.
We had more officers at the border, just less bureaucracy in offices, and the Liberals have done exactly the opposite, and that's why the system's broken after 9 years. They've done the same thing with housing. They've doubled the cost of housing to such an extent that 1/3 of young Canadians are thinking about leaving the country, and his solution is to funnel billions of dollars to bureaucrats who are standing in the way of finding solutions. Why is that his preferred approach? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, once again, we see him attacking mayors in the municipalities who are working with the federal government to increase construction, to cut red tape, to get more housing units built. And we know it's working because at least 18 members of the Conservative caucus have applied for that funding for their municipalities to increase the speed of construction and so on. Unfortunately, the Conservative leader is stopping those members from speaking on behalf of their communities and from advancing the interests of their constituents. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
9 years, this Prime Minister has doubled housing costs. In fact, 80% of people in Canada now believe, for the first time ever, that homeownership is just for the very rich.
Yeah.
Cities that have got money from his so-called housing accelerator have had the worst results. Vancouver, housing starts are down 18%. Toronto, down 21%. Ottawa, down 14%. Guelph, down 65%. Why doesn't he follow our common sense plan to cut out the bureaucratic middlemen and gatekeepers and instead use the savings to axe the sales tax and build the homes.
Mm-hmm.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, once again, on housing, his own MPs have been asking us, for example, the $31 million we're sending to Kelowna in the riding of Kelowna Lake Country, a Conservative riding. This is money that is going to make a real difference in their communities, but the Leader of the Opposition is preventing his MPs from standing up and advocating for their communities. This place is supposed to be a place where members are voices of their communities.
Yo, shut the hell up.
In Ottawa. Instead,
You're lying.
sending them to be his voice in their community.
You're lying. Your cabinet wants to fire you. Yo, he stood in the aisle. You see that? No one believes you.
Order.
Trudeau's such a freaking pansy.
Member from Brampton Centre.
Canadians elect MPs to be their voice in Ottawa.
Yes.
Despite more than 18 Conservative MPs advocating for their communities to receive money through our government's Housing Accelerator Fund, their leader imposed a gag orders, preventing them from pushing for this essential funding. Can the Prime
Colleagues, order.
Yeah, he wants to do something. He wants to mute the mic.
This member is close to the chair, and I can't hear the question. I'm going to ask the honourable member to start his question from the top. Let us not waste more time on any more interventions from the chair so we can get through question period expeditiously. The honourable member from Brampton Centre from the top, please.
Thank you, Speaker. The reality is Conservative can't stand the truth. Canadians elect MPs to be their voice in Ottawa. Despite more than 18 Conservative MPs advocating for their communities to receive money through our government's Accelerator Fund, their leader imposed a gag order, preventing them from pushing for this essential funding. Can the Prime Minister explain to this House what the Conservative leader's cuts to this program would mean?
Good question.
The right on.
You're asking. Did he ask Pierre a question?
Albert Edmonton can please keep his counsel until he's recognized by the chair to speak. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the member for Brampton Centre for his question. He, like most of us in this House, understand how important it is to be your community's voice here in Ottawa and not Ottawa's voice in your community. Most of us in this House, apparently not if you're in the Conservative Party of Canada, because the Conservative leader has decided to prevent his own members of Parliament in communities across the country.
Oh, he's such a loser.
Speaking up for their communities. He is muzzling his MPs, forcing them to be the leader's voice in their communities instead.
He's such a loser. He's trying to take this like feminist purity approach.
We want to put money directly into the pockets of people buying houses. The Prime Minister has doubled the cost of housing in Canada and tripled the cost of rent in Montreal, Mr. Speaker, after 9 years of spending huge amounts of money on local bureaucracies to prevent construction. About a third of the cost of housing in Canada is taxes. By getting rid of the tax, we can build more housing for less. Will he accept my plan to cut the GST on new builds? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I'm listening to the Conservative leader criticizing our Housing Accelerator Fund, but he is directly contradicted by at least 18 of his own members who are currently applying to the federal government for funding in their communities to accelerate the construction of housing, to create more densification, to cut red tape. Conservative members know how important it is to invest in housing. The Conservative leader is stopping them from talking and only promoting austerity and cuts. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. At the same time, with C-83, the Prime Minister allowed Paul Bernardo to be transferred from maximum security to a medium security facility. And now we learn that the Liberal government has decided to prevent the families of the victims of Paul Bernardo from testifying in person at his parole hearings.
Wow.
Could lead to releasing this monster onto the streets. Why is this Conservative government preventing victims from speaking out against the release of Paul Bernardo? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the opposition leader knows full well that this is not a government decision. It's a decision made by an arm's-length agency. But that doesn't stop him from trying to use people who've suffered terribly to score a few political points. If he's truly concerned about national security, he wouldn't have been part of a government that cut funding to law and order and allowed more guns on our streets, and he would have chosen to get a security briefing in order to keep Canadians safe.
L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Passed Hug-a-Thug Bill C-83, which allowed Paul Bernardo to leave maximum security for more luxury and freedom in a medium security penitentiary. Now we learn that the Liberal government is blocking the family members of Paul Bernardo's victims from testifying in person at his parole hearing, where it will be considered for his release. Under Section 6.1 of the Corrections and Conditional Release Act, the minister could intervene to allow the victims to speak up. Why does he keep protecting Bernardo from the victims rather?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition knows full well these are decisions taken by the Arms-Length Parole Board, and the Minister is engaged on this issue. But it won't prevent him from instrumentalizing the grief and anguish of families who are victims of crime for his own narrow personal gain. If he actually cared about public safety and national security, Mr. Speaker, he wouldn't have proposed to cut from the police services and border agencies. He wouldn't be proposing to put more guns on our streets. And
oh my God! Come on, dude! Law-abiding gun owners don't.
National security briefings that would allow him to keep his own party safe.
The Honourable Member from Kitchener South Hespeler.
Mr. Speaker, today is National Child Day, and families in my riding are receiving their Canada Child Benefit checks. This program has supported over 6 million children, but families are worried that the Conservative leader will cut this support. The Conservative leader raves about wanting to cut for housing projects, childcare, pharmacare, and much more. Can the Prime Minister please explain to the House how dangerous these cuts would be?
Great question. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the member for Kitchener South Hespeler for her advocacy. Today, millions of families across the country are receiving their Canada Child Benefit checks to help with everyday expenses. A reminder that the Conservatives voted against the CCB. At the same time, the Conservative leader now threatens to cut those checks along with vital programs like dental care. He is gaslighting Canadians, claiming his Conservative cuts will somehow make make life better for Canadians receiving those programs right now. It's time for him to admit the truth. His real priority is only cutting services, not supporting families.
The honourable member from Victoria.
Today, people in BC are reeling from a bomb cyclone. Just weeks after another atmospheric river, their homes are damaged, power is out. The climate crisis is here, but the Liberals keep letting Canadians down. Instead of acting, they are handing out billions of dollars to rich oil and gas CEOs, and the Conservatives...
Look at her watermelon pen.
If climate
I'm going to ban that with a
real,
petition.
They will cut the supports that communities need to stay safe. So why are the Liberals tossing handouts to some of the biggest polluters while everyday Canadians bear the brunt of the climate crisis?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we made a commitment as part of the G20 to cut inefficient fossil fuel subsidies, and we did that 2 years ahead of all other G20 partners. At the same time, we've put a cap on emissions from the oil and gas sector that is going to continue to protect us, and at the same time, we've brought in a price on pollution that puts more money back in the pockets of 8 out of 10 Canadians while cutting emissions and ensuring inspiring and encouraging innovation. Unfortunately, the NDP hasn't been clear even on something so simple as a price on pollution. On this side of the aisle, we stand up for protecting climate.
The honourable member from Kitchener Centre.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister recently admitted his biggest regret was breaking his promise on electoral reform and claimed he didn't know how he could have done things differently. Well, he could have supported a citizens' assembly on electoral reform instead of blocking the most basic initiative to have everyday Canadians informed by experts explore better options. Not only did Green, Bloc, and NDP MPs all vote in favour, but 39 MPs from his own party did too. He could still do things differently right now and call a citizens' assembly. Will he do it?
Dude, whenever the Green Party talks, I just can't.
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I can understand my colleague's despair when he sits across from the Conservative Party, who have ceased to be communities' voices here in Ottawa and instead are choosing to be their leaders' voice in their communities. Each of us in this place has the responsibility to advocate for our communities, to speak up, chosen by members of our communities to defend their interests, and Conservatives have forgotten that. They are now the leader of the opposition's voice in their communities, not saying anything that he hasn't stamped and improved, and frightened they're going to see consequences if they dare step out of line. That's not democracy, Mr. Speaker.
Alors, s'il vous plaît.
Order, please. I would like to draw your attention to the presence in the gallery of Ms. Judith Suminwa Tuluka, the Prime Minister of the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Are we going to explore a little further?
I'd also like to add that she's the first Prime Minister of the Democratic Republic of Congo.
To the presence of the gallery of the Honourable Andrew Furey, Premier for the province of Newfoundland and Labrador.
Colleagues,
We'll go a little further. We'll see what's going on.
several points of order. So I would ask members who are leaving the chamber to do so quietly so that the chair can hear the points of order.
We're going to have to see what's going on with this stuff because the latest controversy is the pins, wearing watermelon pins, right, for Palestine, wearing Ukraine pins, stuff like that. Lots of point of orders yesterday. We got MPs that got kicked out yesterday. Conservatives are ready. Look at them. They're standing. Pierre normally leaves. But he's there. He's talking.
The honourable member for...
He's still here.
Drummond. He's rising on a point of order. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think that everyone recognizes in this House that statements by members are an important member for members to pay tribute to people in their riding and various constituents and organizations, and also to underscore events or situations that are concerning. Mr. Speaker, on several occasions, we've had very sensitive topics raised that we presented during statements by members, and sometimes it was impossible to focus, to deliver, because the ambient noise was deafening, literally. Mr. Speaker, I would ask you to be careful of this. There's no statement that is more important than another, but everyone should benefit from the same respect and concern of the House. And Mr. Speaker, in all due respect, I would ask you to reassure us that there is silence between statements by members during this, because this week it was particularly difficult. Thank you. I'd like to thank the honourable member for Drummond for this point, and it does raise a very good point. We need everyone's cooperation from all political parties to show respect to each other, to listen, and allow members present their statements in the House. It's the same thing for points of order.
Well, I see that there are other members who are rising on points of order. I'd like to recognize the honourable member from Winnipeg Centre.
Andrew Scheer's there still.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm rising on a point of order to thank the Speaker for his ruling yesterday, as well as to provide some input into how we believe the ruling should be interpreted and enforced based on previous rulings and practice. As the Speaker indicated yesterday in quotes, the Chair seeks the cooperation of all members to be judicious in choosing to wear buttons or pins.
Shut the hell up. I'm going to ban that shit with the petition.
Choosing to raise their concern with the Chair. We do have some additional guidance on this matter from previous speakers. In particular, I'd like to draw members to the attention of a ruling made on May 15, 2014. States as follows. The general rule, of course, is that pins and paraphernalia are not to be worn if doing so causes disruption in the House. It goes on to say, I am a bit concerned about the point of order being raised now because these pins have been worn for at least a week or 10 days, as has been my observation to this point in time. Therefore, I'm having some difficulty accepting any suggestion that it is causing disruption, because if it were, points of order would obviously have been raised earlier in the process.
Wait till a citizen
to point out, Mr.
starts a petition.
Speaker, that many of us have been wearing these pins for many, many months now without comment. I'd also like to state, Mr. Speaker, that this point is critical and should inform how we move forward. First, it's disingenuous and beyond belief for members to wake up one day and decide that somehow that this has been accepted and in use for months is now somehow causing disruption. If something is disruptive, it is disruptive. Second, while I do appreciate that disorder and disruption have always and will continue to be the standard by which pins and indeed broader behavior are judged, we do need to be guided by the Deputy Speaker's intervention in 2014 when he said explicitly, I am having some difficulty accepting any suggestion that is causing disruption. Disruption in and of itself should not mean that a pin is out of order. It is vital that we don't normalize in this chamber a scenario where the loudest and most disruptive voices can use their own disruption to try and force the Chair's hand. And thirdly, we should be guided by the fundamental principle of freedom of speech, and the protection of which is one of the primary responsibilities of the Speaker. As the House of Commons procedure and practice states on page 317, in quotes, it is the responsibility of the Speaker to act as the guardian of the rights and privileges of members and of the House as an institution. Freedom of speech may be the most important of the privileges accorded to members of Parliament. Yesterday, during my intervention, Mr. Speaker, in trying to communicate how I've expressed my freedom of speech, wearing red dress buttons to signify the ongoing genocide of Indigenous women.
In Canada.
Shirt buttons to signify the genocide that occurred in residential schools. And now
in Canada.
The watermelon button to signify the genocide that's been recognized by the United Nations. I was stopped before I was able to speak. Members must be able to continue to express solidarity with constituents and individuals across Canada. This right must never be infringed upon. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank the honourable member.
Dude, she's trying to defend free speech when she's trying to put people in jail and criminally charged.
Ruling yesterday.
I gotta pause it. She's trying to get people criminally charged for being residential school deniers. And then also the NDP tried to get people criminally charged for saying oil and gas is good. Dude, come on. Sudanese. Are you serious? You're going to charge them for freedom of speech? Shut the hell up. Shut the hell up. I'm starting another petition. Gonna make another website, another dope-ass landing page. Gonna have them read it off in Parliament. Gonna force them to read it off in Parliament because we're gonna get thousands and thousands of signatures because people are fed up with this crap. They're fed up with this crap. Canada first. You're a Canadian federal MP. You don't promote provincial matters. You sure as shit don't promote international matters. Canada first. Come on. It's not that complicated.
Of course, consider carefully what the member had raised. I have two more points of order. I have the honourable member from Kingston and the Islands.
Yeah, where was that freedom of speech during the Freedom Convoy?
Earlier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise on a point of order that actually comes out of question period from yesterday.
Shut the hell up, Fivehead.
I think that it is well established and agreed by everybody in this chamber.
He's wearing a Canadian pin.
The reputation of the Speaker is an impartial reputation, and when I say the Speaker, I mean the chair occupant. That might be yourself, it might be the deputy, it might be one of the assistant speakers from time to time. It might even actually be somebody who just sits in there for a few moments to substitute for when a speaker has to depart. The point is that the impartiality of that position is absolutely critical. And in fact, a former speaker of that used to sit in that chair, the member who currently is the House Leader for the Conservatives, the member from Regina Capel, once said in a ruling on September 24th of 2014, he said, another of our time-honored traditions is that the respect of the office of the Speaker. O'Brien and Bosca at page 313 states that, quote, reflections on the character or actions of the Speaker, an allegation of bias, for example, could be taken by the House as breaches of privilege and punished accordingly. I actually went and looked at that, and I found the actual part in there, and there's actually more than what the member, the speaker at the time indicated. If you go to page 313 and look at the impartiality, the immediate next paragraph starts off by saying, on 2 occasions, newspaper editorials were found to contain libelous reflections on the Speaker and were declared by the House in one instance to be of contempt of its privileges, and in another, a gross breach of its privileges. Now, I bring this to your attention, Mr. Speaker, because following your rulings and some actions that you had to take yesterday after question period, the member from Calgary Nose Hill issued a tweet, and the tweet said, watch the Speaker, a Liberal MP, kick me out of the House of Commons and silence me for speaking the truth. She goes on to say, liberal censorship is alive and well in Canada. So as demonstrated by the tweet and the agreement from the Conservatives that is coming across the way, that there is a treatment of the Speaker's chair, not you, in this particular case you, but the role of whoever happens to be sitting in that chair is not being treated in an impartial and a nonpartisan way. I am bringing this to your attention not to protect your honor and your integrity as an individual, Mr. Speaker. I think that you can do that well enough on your own. But instead, I bring it to your attention because I am worried that a dangerous precedent is being set here where attacking the occupant of that chair becomes the norm. As I indicated in through my research and what I had provided to you, there has already been a well-established practice of determining that comments like those are in the breach of the privilege of the Speaker and of this House as a whole. So I would kindly ask you, Mr. Speaker, to reflect upon what I have offered to you today and come back to the House to let us know if that kind of action will be continued to be allowed in the future, or if we are setting a new precedent, or if you will be starting to clamp down on this, because I am greatly worried about the impartiality of the chair. If we continue to allow this,
Dude, he's trying to stop people from criticizing people on X.
in the future will continue to be.
He's trying to censor
end my comments with
free speech on X.
Which is that one of the most important things of our democracy and of our chamber and of the way that this place functions is that those that sit in that chair and those that work at that table are completely impartial, do not bring a political agenda to their role, and they sit there and they do their jobs as servants of the other MPs that are in this House. So I would kindly ask that you reflect upon that, Mr. Speaker, and come back to the House and provide us with some guidance as to how we should be dealing with these situations moving forward. Thank you.
Well said.
Wow. We have Andrew Scheer. The Liberals have that guy.
The islands, and I'm wondering if specifically to this point, I see the honourable member from Regina Capel is rising. The honourable member from Regina Capel.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And if it is your intention to have a formal ruling in response to that point, I'd like to reserve the right to come back and issue more formal remarks. But I would point out that nothing that the member for Kingston just referenced would rise to the level of libelous. I mean, that's the section that he quoted in the Procedure and Practice Handbook, was that libelous statements have been seen as a contempt of the House or a breach of its privileges. Pointing out that the member was kicked out is a true statement. There's nothing libelous in that. That is what happened yesterday. You are a member of the Liberal Party. You are a Liberal MP. That is a true statement. Nothing in what was just read out in any way would rise to the level of a libelous remark, unless the member is suddenly realizing that being associated with the Liberal Party itself is libelous, which I certainly wouldn't disagree with, but I'm sure some people would.
See that the honourable member for Louis-Saint-Laurent is rising on a point of order.
I gotta pause it. This is the part of politics that people don't normally catch because it's boring, right? Look at the viewership, right? In terms of the live stream, we were just at like 4,500 and they dropped. We're at 4,000. There's probably still some people that are backlogged watching question period. This is just the very meticulous and litigious part of politics that people hate. The nitty gritty little details. But yo, this shit is so funny. This is so funny. When you have like brand name people, right? When you got like Andrew Scheer there. If it was like a backbench conservative MP, it probably wouldn't be as funny, but it's a main character. It's the main character of the show, right? It's just so funny, man. Let's continue this. I'm having fun with these point of orders.
We have seen in the last minute a lot of time for people to express their point of order, so this is why I would like to have the same opportunity to express the point that I want to raise. Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker.
Yo, he can speak English.
Question period. There was an important issue at question. There was a report that was tabled this night. It was at 1 a.m. in Ottawa time for COP29 that I am participating virtually as a Canadian member, a report concerning the track record of 67 countries worldwide in terms of climate change efficacy.
PI, Climate Change Performance Index 2025 results. Je le dis en anglais, monsieur le
I said it in English, Mr. Speaker, not just to be a comedian, but because that was the language of the press release. And so we can see that after 9 years of this government, which you see in the table on page 7, Canada, under this Liberal government, is ranked 62nd out of 67. I would seek unanimous consent to table this press release, and if the House unfortunately refused, they would be insulting COP29. All those opposed to what the honourable member is proposing will please say nay. There is not unanimous consent. Routine proceedings. Tabling of documents.
To the Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pursuant to Standing Order 36A, I have the honor to table on both of
This guy just looks like Ratatouille, man.
responses to 3 petitions. These returns will be tabled in an electronic format. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Continuing on with the introduction of government bills.
Statements by ministers.
Rapport de délégation.
Reports from interparliamentary delegations.
From committees, the Honourable Member for Humber River Black Creek.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Pursuant to Standing Order 1073, I have the honour to present in both official languages the 10th report of the Liaison Committee entitled Committee Activities and Expenditures April 1st, 2024 to August 31st, 2024. This report highlights the work and accomplishment of each committee of the House, as well as detailing the budgets that fund the activities approved by the committee. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Dépôt de projet de loi émanant.
Introduction of private members' bills. First reading of Senate public bills. Motions.
Presenting petitions. Présentation de pétition. Member for Renfrew Nipissing Pembroke.
I'm Mr. Speaker, and I'm pleased to rise to present a petition signed by the great people from the freedom-loving riding of Canada Carleton. They're calling on the Government of Canada to refrain from endorsing the so-called pandemic treaty drafted by the World Health Organization that had never received a single debate or vote in the House of Commons. This concern is by agreeing to this legally binding treaty, Canada is signing away our own sovereignty, allowing UN bureaucrats who are unaccountable to Canadians the power to override our laws, rights, and freedoms. And I have a second petition here, Mr. Speaker, if you would allow me, because I'd also like to present a petition signed by the people from Whitby, Ajax, and Pickering, Uxbridge, who are devastated by this government's carbon tax, making their lives more expensive by increasing their costs for fuel, food, and housing. And now this government plans to quadruple the tax that would only make lives more expensive. So they're calling on the government to scrap all federal excise taxes on energy, scrap the GST on oil and gas, and scrap the carbon tax.
Hey.
Presenting of petitions, presentation of petition, the member for Scarborough Centre.
Whose grandma is that?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to present a petition from the members of the Lebanese Canadian community in my riding of Scarborough Centre. They draw the attention of the House to the expansion of the conflict in the Middle East, which has killed tens of thousands of innocent Palestinians into Lebanon, where Israeli military action has killed hundreds of people and injured and displaced thousands since September 23rd alone. And they note that they consider onerous visa restrictions for people trying to flee the war zone. They call on the government to implement a special visa program similar to what Canada provided for Ukrainians fleeing that war zone, temporary resident visas for the extended family of Canadian citizens and permanent residents who want to reach Canada, work for the safe evacuation of Canadian citizens and their extended families from Lebanon, and a transparent and fair process that gives priority to evacuating women, children, and the elderly. Thank you.
Petitions, presentation of petitions. Now remember for Senate Gulf Islands.
Speaker, it's a true honor to rise and present a petition that's been signed by over 10,000 people, in fact 10,187, some of whom are constituents, but they're from far and wide, including eminent researchers in animal issues, from York Research Center, from Queen's University. It's a very long petition, Mr. Speaker, with many signatories, including the Humane Society International, Montreal SPCA, and in fact, it follows on a declaration by 39 scientists called the New York Declaration on Animal Consciousness. The petitioners, and it is, again, as I said, Mr. Speaker, an eminent list.
Yeah, we got more signatures than hers.
Reconsider and
double, triple.
Reform our laws as they relate to animals. The petitioners point out that animals are currently, under our law, not considered sentient beings and are classified as property. The researchers and the scientists confirm affirm that sentience is the ability to experience feelings and sensations and is an ethical basis for determining that animals deserve moral consideration. So of the 32 countries that have formally recognized non-human animal sentience, and they cite them in this petition, including the European Union, Switzerland, Chile, Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom, ask that Canada join this group of countries and reform our laws to recognize animals as sentient beings. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Presenting the petition
Animals are
for Scarborough North.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to present petition E4981 with 593 signatures on behalf of Tamil
500 signatures.
with the support
Dude,
of the transnational government of Tamil Eelam.
we have like almost 12,000.
Commons to take legal action before the International Court of Justice against Sri Lanka under the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. They note the atrocity crimes, including war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide committed against the Eelam Tamil people, citing reports by the United Nations Secretary General's Panel of Experts on Accountability and Internal Review Panel on United Nations Action in Sri Lanka. The petitioners are deeply committed to a world that is free of genocide, and they believe that accountability is essential in preventing genocide and ensuring never again. In addition, Mr. Speaker, I rise today to present petition E5058 with 636 signatories on
Again,
behalf of Eelam Tamils.
a bajillion times more
The petition
with our
describes
signature,
Canada
our
as a
petition.
diasporic home to the largest number of Eelam Tamils, a nation of people facing protracted genocide for over 75 years in Tamil Eelam, their occupied traditional homeland in Sri Lanka. First, the petitioners call upon the House of Commons to initiate proceedings by Canada against Sri Lanka at the International Court of Justice to investigate Tamil genocide, both as an injured state party on behalf of its citizens of Eelam Tamil heritage and as a state party exercising obligations erga omnes partes. Second, the petitioners call for an internationally administered referendum among the people in the occupied homeland and in the diaspora on the creation of an independent and sovereign state of Tamil Eelam. Thank you.
Presenting the petitions, Presentation petition, the Honourable Member for Kingston and the Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have two petitions to present today. The first is with respect to the departure of radio and television journalists, and in particular, how we are continuing to see a disappearance of crucial local coverage in our communities. The
It's a free market.
signatories of the petition are calling on the government to extend Canadian journalism labor tax credit to include radio and TV. They're asking the government
Free market, baby.
to support Canadian-owned media by dedicating 70% of the federal advertising dollars to local radio, TV, print, and digital media, and are asking the government to eliminate tax deductions for advertising purposes on foreign-owned internet delivered media sites. Mr. Speaker, I have a petition here from many Canadians that are calling to the government's attention the fact that the RCMP has reported that the government of India is interfering in Canada's elections and murdering, threatening, and extorting Canadians on Canadian soil. They are also bringing to the attention of the House that it is extremely troubling what is being learned that the Leader of the Opposition is doing with respect to his security clearance and not getting one. I've never been heckled when giving a petition before, but I'll continue. The signatories of this petition,
What a load of
my job
crap.
is just to deliver it on their behalf, is calling on the leader of the Conservative Party to get his security clearance and take action to help stop foreign governments from interfering in Canada and targeting Canadians. I'm happy to present that on their behalf.
What a load of crap.
The Honourable for Durham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to stand in the House today and present a petition on behalf of residents of Durham Region and across Canada who are concerned with Liberal government cuts to youth cadet programs. The Liberal government has cut funding to Sea Cadets, Air Cadets, and Army Cadet programs, leaving first and second year recruits without proper dress uniforms. This is shameful, and many Canadians are very concerned. The petition calls upon the government to restore funding for all youth cadet programs so new cadet recruits can be issued proper dress uniforms, to consult with local youth cadet programs throughout Canada, to assess other budgetary challenges, and also to commit to long-term, stable funding for youth cadets. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also have another petition on behalf of students across Canada who are concerned about the carbon tax and its impact on the future of our country. The petition states quite clearly, the carbon tax has contributed to the unaffordability crisis, which has left students and youth unable to live independently of their parents. Therefore, we, the undersigned students and residents of Canada, call upon the Government of Canada to remove the carbon tax to alleviate the ongoing affordability crisis that is causing students and people of Canada to struggle. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Presenting the petitions, the honourable member for Winnipeg North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I too have a petition to table that highlights the issue of foreign interference, and it is in fact
Every single petition that's been named, we have more signatures on our petition than all of these combined.
Security clearance. It's
Let that
rooted in
sink in.
concerns, Mr. Speaker, that come in regards to everything from assassination to extortion to political interference. It's a very serious petition, and the people are implying within the petition that the leader of the Conservative Party does need to get the security clearance necessary so that he can become better informed about foreign interference. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Sherwood Park, Saskatchewan.
Mr. Chair, I believe the rules require a petition to be addressed to the House or to the government. The Leader of the Opposition will soon be the Prime Minister. He's not the Prime Minister yet. Yeah. And I wonder if it's in order for a petition to be addressed to a person who is not the Prime Minister, the government, or the House.
Okay, the Honourable the Deputy House Leader.
When the petition is tabled, the member will be able to read it. It is specifically given to the House of Commons to encourage the Leader of the Opposition to get his security clearance.
And just for further clearance, just for further clarity, is that a petition can be addressed to any member of Parliament. So, and there was the honourable member of Kings North,
Rick Perkins on the right,
Mr. Speaker, and
blowing off some steam.
All I'm doing is conveying a petition that has been signed by many Canadians. They are genuinely concerned that the leader of the Conservative Party has not taken it upon himself to get the security clearance necessary to become better informed.
How many signatures?
Interests of Canadians. It's a legitimate and a petition in which I would encourage the member opposite to read.
That's right.
How many signatures does that have?
Petitions, Presentation Petition, the honourable member for Sherwood Park, Saskatchewan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a petition from Canadians who share their condolences with the member for Kingston the Islands on being passed over for cabinet again. Oh, sorry, I'm misreading, Mr. Speaker. This is actually a petition in support of Bill C-257. It's a private member's bill that I have tabled. That seeks to protect the fundamental rights of Canadians by adding political belief and activity as prohibited grounds of discrimination in the Canadian Human Rights Act. This bill would combat political discrimination. It calls on members of the House to support Bill C-257 and to defend the rights of Canadians to peacefully express their political opinions. Next, I'm tabling a petition from folks who are deeply concerned about the ongoing persecution of Falun Gong practitioners in the People's Republic of China. Petitioners share some of the history of that persecution, and they call on the House to strongly condemn this persecution and to continue to take steps to combat that persecution and to express its solidarity with Falun Gong practitioners who seek to simply engage in a peaceful meditative practice and advance the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. Next, I'll table a petition, Mr. Speaker, from Canadians who are troubled by the radical and extreme proposals we continue to see for the expansion of Canada's euthanasia regime. Yeah. The petitioners in particular note a call that euthanasia be expanded to include babies from birth to 1 year of age who come into the world with severe deformities and very serious syndromes. This proposal for the legalized killings of infants is deeply concerning to many Canadians, and the petitioners say that infanticide is always wrong. Petitioners call on the House and the government to oppose any attempt to allow the killing of children in Canada. And I'll table one final petition, Mr. Speaker. This is regarding the situation in Burma. Petitioners draw to the House the horrific crimes of the military junta in Burma, the continuing indiscriminate killing, torture, rape, imprisonment, displacement of civilians, airstrikes targeting civilians and vital humanitarian supplies. And they note that the state-owned Myanmar oil and gas enterprise accounts for a majority of the funding the military receives that enable its ongoing campaigns against civilians, and that Canada has an obligation to support the people of Myanmar as it has outlined in the context of responsibility to protect and its obligations to the Rohingya and other persecuted minorities. Petitioners therefore want the Government of Canada to call for an immediate end to executions, atrocities, and human rights abuses by the Burmese junta. They want to see humanitarian aid delivered in a cross-border way through opposition-controlled areas instead of through areas controlled by the military junta. They want to see technological and logistical support for communications infrastructure to help the opposition, the NUG and other opposition elements that are successfully defending themselves and defending the people against the junta. They would like to see the government impose sanctions against the Myanmar oil and gas enterprise, including blocking direct and indirect oil and gas purchases that support the Burmese regime. They want more collaboration as well with pro-democracy groups, promoting the work of the NUG and reconciliation among the various communities in Burma that are working together to advance a free, pluralistic democracy. Petitioners are calling for tougher sanctions against the junta, cross-border aid, and support for the democracy movement. I hope this petition will receive the support of all members, and I commend it to the House, and I'll leave it there. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Presenting no petitions. That was all of them. Questions on the order paper. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. The following questions will be answered today. Question 3046. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, if the government's responses to questions numbered 3039 to 3045 could be made orders for return, these returns would be tabled in an electronic format immediately.
It is the pleasure of the House that the aforementioned questions be made orders for return and that they be tabled immediately. Agreed and so ordered. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Speaker, I would ask that all remaining questions be allowed to stand at this time, please.
And the next notice of motions for production of papers, the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
And Mr. Speaker, I would then ask that all notices of motions for the production of papers also be allowed to stand at this time, please.
Or so ordered. Orders of the day. Ordre du jour.
Orders of the day, ordre du jour, privilege, resuming consideration.
All right, I think we're going to stop that stream there. I've got some more stuff ready for you guys. So don't feel like you need to go anywhere. I'm just going to take the time right now to pull that up. That was one hell of a question period, eh? Holy smokes, man. Jeez, we found out Randy got fired from question period because it happened simultaneously, like right as question period began. Trudeau was, dealing with it, and I mean that's insane. That's absolutely insane. The timing of that was pretty gnarly. But here we go, folks. This one is dedicated to Jagmeet Singh. Jagmeet Singh did a press conference right before question period, and he proposed a GST relief pledge. Let's take a look here.
I have an opening and then I'll look forward to your questions. We believe that all Canadians should be able to find a good job that allows you to find a place that meets your needs and you can afford. And then you can have a fridge full of groceries. You can get healthcare when you need it. But that is not how people feel right now. Right now, people are feeling so squeezed. Buying groceries is always a worry if you're not going to be able to afford the things that your family needs. Finding a home you can afford seems impossible. All the bills continue to rise. And throughout all of that, people feel like Justin Trudeau and the Liberals have let them down, haven't met the challenges that they're going through, haven't responded to their needs. And what Pierre Poilievre is proposing, and the Conservatives, what they're proposing is to cut the things you need, to make things even worse. Pierre Poilievre wants to cut pensions for seniors. How could a senior who's already struggling to afford their groceries afford to do so with pensions that are even less? He wants to cut health care. He wants to cut dental care, which is saving families money, which is helping them be healthier. He wants to cut child care. At a time when people are struggling, he's going to make it even harder because without affordable child care, people are not going to be able to go to work. he's going to make things even harder for people. And so New Democrats are committing to fight back against conservative cuts before they happen. We want to defend what we have, but we also want to give people some relief right away. So a New Democrat government will remove the GST off of daily essentials and monthly bills. We're talking about children's needs, like children's clothing, diapers, monthly bills like your cell phone and your internet and your home heating. These are essentials. The GST should have never been applied to these essentials. The government should not be nickel and diming you on these regular bills, these important bills, these essentials. So we would provide that immediate relief. In fact, we've written to each of the premiers to do the same thing, to provide relief by removing the HST and the GST off of these essentials and these monthly bills. That's real relief to Canadians right away while we continue to defend the things that we need. A healthcare system that's there for you, to make sure you can access childcare that's affordable. We're going to continue to fight for you. So for folks out there that are worried about the cuts that Pierre Poilievre wants to bring in, I invite you to join us. We are here to fight for Canadians to make life more affordable. I'll do that again in French, and then I look.
See, if that was believable, though, then we wouldn't be waiting for the one person who has basically grabbed 41 plus million Canadians by the gonads and held them hostage. We wouldn't be waiting for him to call a snap election. But unfortunately, he is not working on behalf of Canadians. His loyalty is hardly to Canada. I mean, this is come into question by mainstream media, by analysts. He's like a very big supporter of Khalistani, terrorist separatists, and like it's just nuts, this guy. So I don't know who he's trying to pander to, but the support for the NDP is quite literally at a all-time low. I gotta skip forward the French.
De trouver de une logique. Mais la réalité, ce n'est pas possible. C'est impossible. Poilievre, pension pour les investisseurs avant qu'il commence. Coupure conservateur pour défendre. When people are saying
supplementary estimates.
Réduire les factures. Merci. With that, I'm ready for any questions.
On the supplementary estimates, is your party willing to work with the Liberals to get those passed?
At a time when people are saying, I can't afford to buy my groceries, they're seeing the Liberals and Conservatives play games in here. The Liberals could just disclose the documents. That's what's holding up this matter. The Speaker has ruled on it. They could disclose the documents. And the Conservatives just want to hold this up because they want to play games. They don't want anything to happen in the House. So I blame both of them. Particularly at a time when people are hurting, they should smarten up, stop playing these games, disclose the documents, and let's move forward.
But in that context, what is your view? In that context of the fight that we are currently seeing, will you support the Liberals to end the debate and pass the estimates, or will you remain hands-off as you have for the last 2 months?
My message is to Justin Trudeau and the Liberals and to Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives, stop playing games, disclose the documents, get things moving forward.
Are you willing for a
Cette attitude-là, est-ce que ça veut dire que vous continuez de travailler avec les libéraux là, jour après jour?
Documents, c'est inacceptable. The Liberals come out and say, oh...
Liberals on the close, like lapse before supporting Liberals on the closing this filibuster.
The Liberals are to blame here. The Liberals come out and say, oh, poor us. They could just disclose the documents. So disclose them.
So you will not give
they
them a
should
lifeline.
disclose the documents.
So you will not give them a lifeline?
And we're not going to let the Conservative or the Liberals get away with not being transparent. Of course not. We want them to disclose the documents, do what's right, disclose and provide transparency. And to the Conservatives, stop playing games. We know you're not interested in getting anything done, but Canadians need things done. Canadians need to see some relief. Canadians need to see a break because they're drowning right now. So stop playing these games.
He's such a slime ball.
Willing to put that money at risk? You could guarantee that it flows to the health department.
The Liberals are putting this at risk. The Liberals could just disclose some documents. So why are the Liberals, why is Justin Trudeau putting all of this important work at risk? Just to cover themselves? Just to cover up a scandal? Provide transparency and things move forward.
Alors comment vous expliquez quand même la GRC dit on ne veut pas des documents fournis comme ça, ça met en péril les enquêtes éventuelles. Pourquoi vous jouez ce jeu-là? Même la GRC dit on ne les veut pas ces documents. Pourquoi voulez-vous les avoir?
Les libéraux peuvent partager les documents dans une autre manière, mais la question, c'est une question de transparence. Et les libéraux continuent de dire que c'est plus important de protéger le parti au lieu de faire ce qu'il faut. Donc, mon opinion, c'est que les libéraux doivent partager les documents fournir la transparence dans ce cas et on peut aller de l'avant.
There is two NDP premiers. What's been their response to your letter? Why haven't they come out in support of it already?
Well, we just put out the letter. We just put out the call, so we look forward to hearing responses. And we think that this is an important measure to take off the GST or the HST off of some of these essentials would give people some breathing room. I spoke with a single mom. She's got one daughter. She's working a decent job, but she says she's got to work basically from morning to night to be able to pay the bills, to put food on the table. And I went through the bills with her, and she said, you know what, taking the GST off of these bills, taking it off would actually give me some breathing room. I could take my daughter out maybe for a pizza night. Maybe I could work a couple less hours. That's a difference in people's lives that we want to see happen right away. So we're going to fight. We're going to fight hard to make sure Justin Trudeau and the Liberals do this. And if not, I'll do it as Prime Minister. Thank you.
Yeah. I hate Jagmeet. I don't know what else to say. I mean, Jagmeet is quite literally the greasiest politician. He just gaslights people. He panders. He's a horrible, horrible human being. And he's holding this country hostage to a government that nobody voted for. We could just have peace of mind. We could go back to being healthy mentally and just not worry too much about politics by getting rid of the Trudeau government if Jagmeet Singh actually grew some balls and just called this election. But I don't think we're going to get to that point. That's my opinion, folks. I would absolutely love to know yours. Next up, we have Bill Blair, who's got something to say about the military, it seems. Let's take a look here, because it's not looking too good. It's not looking too good for him.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for your patience. Today, we have received the fourth biannual report of our external monitor. I want to take the opportunity to express my personal gratitude to Madam Tarian for her report. The External Monitor has the very important job on behalf of the Government of Canada in overseeing and reviewing the implementation of Madam Justice Arbour's 48 recommendations. And members of the Canadian Armed Forces have made a significant and necessary commitment to safeguard sovereignty and security for Canada and all Canadians. And that commitment is to also ensure that we get the job done, and we're doing it by fostering respect and inclusion in our workplace. Madam Tarian's report has confirmed that we are continuing to make tangible progress in response to the independent external comprehensive review recommendations. 22 of those recommendations have been addressed, and another 9 are expected to be completed by the end of the year. We are on track to have completed all 48 of the recommendations by the end of 2025. We have published a comprehensive implementation review, and by the end of this year, we have fully implemented 2/3 of the recommendations before us. One of the more important recommendations concerns Recommendation 5 in Bill C-66, our legislation that would amend the National Defence Act, is going to provide for civilian authorities exclusive jurisdiction over criminal code sexual offences committed in Canada. That bill is now before second reading in the House of Commons. I have been very encouraged that all parties have indicated their support to move this bill to committee, and I'm very much looking forward to getting that vote done at second reading and this bill to committee as quickly as possible. It's important legislation, and it's particularly important to the members of the Canadian Armed Forces and the confidence that they can have that they will be treated respectfully and appropriately. And also, as Madam Tarian has noted in her report, there are several recommendations that we are moving forward rapidly on to make recruitment processes more efficient and effective. These changes are also critical to help close the unsustainable gap between the CAF's actual force size and our authorized force size. We are currently over 14,000 people short of what we require in the Canadian Armed Forces, and we're working diligently to close that gap. As announced in Canada's Defence Policy Update, Our North Strong and Free, we are establishing a probationary period to enable faster enrolment of applicants and the capacity to release members who do not adhere to our conduct requirements with less administrative burden than currently exists. This new probation period will be fully implemented by December of 2024, next month. We are also reviewing medical requirements to make them more reflective of societal norms. And as noted by Madame Tarian, the CAF has trialled an exemption to the Canadian Forces Aptitude Test for certain applications and occupations. And since April 2024, more than 3,000 individuals have been processed according to this new approach, and for them, the test is applied later during basic training. I can share with you today that following the success of this trial, this approach will now be used for all incoming applicants. As Madam Tarian has also indicated, and as Madam Arbor recommended, clarity in terms of what is deemed as inappropriate behavior represents the very first step in their eradication. We have heard from many CAF Defence team members and partners and our stakeholders that how we describe and define issues or situations directly affects how we respond. In response to Recommendation 1, in June, the CAF updated the broad definition of sexual misconduct and included sexual assault as a standalone definition, referring to the criminal code definitions of those terms as the applicable law. The new definition clearly distinguishes between conduct deficiencies, harassment, and crimes of a sexual nature. And today, I am pleased to release the sexual and gender-based violence spectrum, which will be available to you all. And this spectrum reinforces those definitions and identifies specific behaviors for each in order to offer more clarity to the public and, most importantly, to the members of the Canadian Armed Forces. It sets clear expectations about conduct and consequences, and it will help defence team members respond appropriately where inappropriate behaviors occur. And finally, if I can get this page opened, and I did, I am also pleased to report that Recommendation 8 of the National Apology Advisory Committee report has been addressed with the establishment of the Anti-Black Racism Ministerial Advisory Committee. This committee will provide external and independent oversight and guidance on current and future D&D CAF anti-Black racism policies, programs, and initiatives, and we have begun the important process of identifying and accepting applications for that new program. Finally, I'd like to offer my very sincere thanks once again to Madam Tarian for her frank evaluation of our progress and remaining work. Throughout this productive process, we are advancing institutional change in a tangible and sustainable way, while at the same time being accountable to that progress for all of our members, to their families, and to all Canadians. Thank you, and I'd be happy to take any questions you may have.
Outside today on the sidewalk are a group of Afghan Canadian citizens who served alongside the Canadian military in Kandahar. They are asking for equitable treatment when it comes to access to benefits. You have the ministerial authority to make that happen today. Why won't you?
And to be very clear, I agree completely that they are entitled to benefits for their service and for injuries they may have received. They are not members of the Canadian Armed Forces. They were contract employees, but they are entitled to all of the benefits of public service employees. We are working through that process with them. It is, I believe, an equitable approach. The WSIB has been working to determine their health provisions. The vast majority of their applications have been heard and addressed. There are also other outstanding matters with respect to income replacement programs, which they also are seeking entitlement to. We're working through those processes. I agree that they deserve our support. The right way to do that is to provide them with exactly the same suite of benefits that are available to all public service employees. And although they were contract employees,
why not soldiers? They served alongside soldiers. They walked alongside them. They carried their weapons.
And the benefits that are provided to members of the Canadian Armed Forces are legislated under our legislation. And to be very clear, these were contract employees of the Canadian Armed Forces and are dealt with in exactly the same accordance of all of the benefits that all public service employees are entitled to. We're working through those processes with them now.
When is the NASAMS air defense system scheduled to arrive in Ukraine?
I have very good news on that. The Prime Minister has already spoken to President Zelensky. We've been working very closely with the Americans and with the manufacturer, Raytheon, to build those systems and to get them delivered. They are now currently in Poland, and they are scheduled for imminent delivery across the border, and we're working really closely with Ukrainians to get that new system purchased by Canada and provided to the Ukrainians into that country as quickly as possible. I anticipate we'll have much more to say on that in the days to come.
The Biden administration says they're going to be giving anti-personnel landmines to Ukraine. That's something the Ottawa Treaty says should not be used anymore. Does Canada support their use in Ukraine by the Ukrainians?
Canada's position has always been very well articulated with respect to the use of anti-personnel landmines, and at the same time, we strongly support Ukraine's right to defend themselves. We've already seen quite a reaction from Russia with respect to Ukraine being given the ability to defend itself more effectively. That's a very common thing for bullies to say. When bullies know that their victims are capable of hitting back, they react badly to it. That's what Russia is doing. So we certainly support Ukraine's right to defend itself, and at the same time, our position with respect to concerns over anti-personnel mines has not changed.
Do you support them using the mines, though? But just clearly, do you support them using the mines?
They are using mines already quite effectively in order to prevent Russian incursion onto their territory. But our position with respect to anti-personnel mines, I think, is well articulated. Canada has not changed its position with respect to that. The concerns we have for people, and not just soldiers in combat, but for people. We have seen the effect of such munitions in many other countries, and it can create great difficulty for the future of those countries. Those concerns we continue to express, and at the same time, we support Ukraine's ability to defend itself.
Paul Bernardo, as a former public safety minister and Toronto police officer and police chief, what is your reaction to the parole board denying the families the right to attend in person his next parole hearing, and should they reverse that decision?
I know those families, and I'm very familiar with that case. I was a police officer in Toronto during Mr. Bernardo's criminal activities, and I know those families and those victims. I disagree with the decision made by the parole board. I acknowledge and recognize that they are independent of government, and they make their own decisions. And at the same time, I think, like most Canadians, I believe that the French Mahaffey families have every right to make the impact that those terrible crimes have had on their families. They have a right to be heard, and I would strongly support revisiting that particular decision.
Supplementary estimates are... The Canadian security agencies believe, according to a Globe report, that Prime Minister Modi knew about the killing and the planning of Nidor. I'm wondering what you can confirm about this.
I think it is up to our law enforcement agencies and the national security agencies where they deem it appropriate to be responsible for the release of information, and that should be done according to our laws and rules. I don't think it's appropriate for me to comment further.
Supplementary estimates are delayed.
Dude, this guy's getting badgered.
To make sure funding for Canadian forces aren't lapsed?
I'm a little bit concerned about the supplementary estimates. It's one of the reasons I'm appearing tomorrow before the National Defence Committee to articulate why the approval of those supplementary estimates are critical to the operations of the Canadian Armed Forces and to our national defence. There's also a vote 10 under the estimates B for the support to Ukraine, $763 million that Ukraine urgently needs for munitions, for training, and for the tools that they need to defend
themselves. Not our fight.
Unfortunately, if there was a delay in the approval of those supplements, it could result in the lapsing of that funding. And so I'm very hopeful that it's one of the reasons I'm going before committee tomorrow is to share with my parliamentary colleagues the urgency of making sure that we provide to the Canadian Armed Forces the resources they need to do their job. It's our responsibility as government, but also to make sure that the money that Ukraine so urgently needs is made available to them.
What about your last question on this one, please?
Canadians in Ukraine right now, and are you concerned about the escalating situation there?
I'm been made aware that the United U.S. Consulate and the Canadian Consulate have ceased consular operations today in response to a very specific threat. So naturally, we are concerned about the safety of our people, but also the safety of the Ukrainian people. And at the same time, we believe that the clearest and most certain path to peaceful resolution of that conflict is making sure that Ukraine has what it needs to defend itself. Thank you all very much. Have a good day.
Or we go with what Donald Trump suggested the moment he got elected as president when he spoke with Putin, and that was Ukraine does not bid on being a part of NATO for the next 20 years, and Putin returns home. In that way, Russia isn't fully surrounded by NATO. The war stops, and we stop, spending money, and everyone can just go back to living and trying to grow their economies without a fear of a nuclear storm. But hey, that's just common sense in combination with my own opinion. I would absolutely love to know what you guys think down below in the comments. Ladies and gentlemen, I think this is where we're going to end the live stream. We did a lot today. This was very, very exciting. I'm going to read off some of the super chats before I go, though. Matt the Electrician with a 279 saying stop muting the mics. Yep. Yeah, no, that's good. He, the House Speaker has barely muted the mic since the petition has started, so that's good. I do believe it's working. Steffi with a 2 saying, I want election by January for my birthday. Happy early birthday. I can only wish for the same thing. 3CGC with the 2 saying, Randy resigned from cabinet, not as an MP. Correct. Not yet. So I guess that makes him independent. Sammy with the 2 saying, here, have 2. Thanks, Sammy. Brian with the 2 US. It was like $15 Canadian. Justin Diddy Trudeau or Justin True Diddy. Oh, there's ties, right, to like him and Diddy or something like that. He went to some Diddy parties. I'm not too sure. I've just seen a couple titles, articles. Silent Guardian with a 2 saying "Axe the facts." Trudeau's new slogan. That was Pierre that said that, I believe. Pierre towards Trudeau said "Axe the facts." That's what Trudeau likes to do. After Trudeau's incident as a teacher, I'm wondering what he's doing on Epstein Island and the real reason why he's sending billions like blackmail money. That's from Andrew LePence with the 5. Did Trudeau go to Epstein Island? I didn't know about that. I'm not too caught up on all that stuff. Trev with the 279 saying frick petition now, damn it. Only Canadian pins. Yes, we're gonna work on it. We're gonna be working on that petition. It's I'll be starting that. Well, it's already been started, but I'll be doing some more of that today. Matthew Gallagher with the 5 saying, how does the cameraman stand the smell of Jagmeet's BS he is spewing? Dude, I hate Jagmeet. He's the worst politician. He's the grimiest politician. Matthew Gallagher with the 2 saying, stop playing games, says the king of playing games. I believe that was Jagmeet, right? Yeah, he's a dummy. He's a dummerson. Folks, this is where we're going to end the stream. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back same time tomorrow. Don't forget, there's very few question periods left before they take off for the winter break. So make sure that you tune into as many as possible. And thanks for stopping by. Thanks for all the support. Thanks for liking the stream. We got over 1,500 likes. That ain't too shabby. Definitely a good turnout today. And we got one last super chat here. The Poor Man's Poet with the 5 American. 75 Canadian equivalent, probably likely. Just one for the road, brother. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks a lot. I appreciate the support, guys. The best way to support, I mean, I obviously, I ain't going to say no to the super chats. But if you do want to support the channel above and beyond, liking and subscribing. Also, you can get stickers linked down below in the description. Go explore the merch shop. On the sticker packs, if you use code SUNSHINE, you'll get 15% off. Peace and love, everybody. Go enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you guys same time tomorrow. Bye for now.